The Warriors stole their support. We'll see if the Kings can steal the set. Oni Warriors versus the Camelot Kings coming right up.
And welcome back, SMITE fans, to our second matchup here in our kickoff tournament, moving into the Road to Worlds phase. Our first set of the day was a 3-0 for the Six Ferrymen. Now we move into the Camelot Kings and the Oni Warriors. I'm J-Mac. I got Trelly joining me here on the desk. We get ready to talk about these two teams, and just that little bumper alone, we kind of got a little indication here, maybe a little bit of a grudge rivalry going on now. Camelot Kings, former support genetics, now over on the Oni Warriors. The Camelot Kings, they grab Quig for themselves. We're going to kind of deep dive a little bit more in the rosters, but definitely maybe a little bit of sparks to fly in this set, Trelly.
I hope so. I mean, you know, all in friendly combat, of course, but at the very least, you got to assume the Camelot Kings are maybe a little bit salty about that. The Oni Warriors possibly heating up. I mean, weird to say considering how hot they already were, but at this point, taking genetics might change their dynamic a little bit.
We'll have to see which of these two teams can continue moving on in our bracket. We can take a look in, because if you missed out on the first set and you're wondering, well, what's going on with everything? Well, here's our bracket for the weekend. Starting off today, going all the way through on Sunday. It is best of fives for every single match, even here in our quarterfinals. So we have the Oni Warriors and the Camelot Kings. Their opponent will be the winner of the Hounds and the Leviathans. And for the Six Ferrymen, who found their first victory with the 3 over the Gladiators, we'll be awaiting the winners of the Dragons and the Ravens to see who they will square off with in the semifinals. That will be played over on Saturday and Sunday. With that final matchup there, it'll be just the single finals, that best of 5, and then we'll have our divisional draft show that'll happen after, where the two captains from the teams that made it to the finals will be the ones to be able to draft out in their brackets and their tournaments, divisions, and whatnot, and that gets us set up for the actual full-on phase. But before we even get to all that, we still got to get through this quarterfinal matchup and kind of talking about, you know, the Camelot Kings, specifically a team that was the reigning world champions coming into this season. Started off real hot in phase 1. I remember they kicked things off 4-0, got handed their first loss as a 4-1. I believe that was to the Gladiators at that time. And then from there, it kind of felt like a decline for the Kings. We never really saw this kickback from them. Start off 4-0, ended 1-5 for the last half of theirs. Didn't really have the strongest performance through the Masters and the playoffs up until that point. Now looking for a resurgence here with their new support.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analysis, right? The Kings, we've known, have been a top echelon team for sure. It does seem like at this point they were looking for a way to understand the meta, maybe just weren't quite, you know, grasping exactly how they wanted to play in this new season. Now, we're looking into where we are currently. They have to pick up a new support in Quig. Does that change exactly how they're going to have their play style? Does that change their aggression? Does that change their way of the farm? Only time will tell.
Yeah, and having all these change-ups as far as rosters have been, we've noticed that the biggest trend is that supports have been swapping out here, but you have one person who's always got to directly deal with your support, and that's your carry over in that lane. So now, leaving genetics leaving, now Quig joining in here. I'm curious to maybe what Jarcorrr is kind of thinking about this, maybe how he's been able to work with his teammate, as we get to talk to him in our pregame interview.
That's right, I've got Jarcorrr standing here, and I'm going to go right off what he had just said. You know, losing genetics, now having Quig. How does it feel in the lane and for the team?
I think it's a really interesting change, I would say. I have the opportunity to work with multiple people in the past. I think last year I worked with like 10 or 15 different people. So having someone new in, I think it's like a cool, different change on the pace, on how people want to play the game. There is a new voice, there is like different ideas, and I'm just really excited to just get to work with him.
And it comes with maybe a rarity for us this early in the season, or this early in the phase at least, that you're immediately playing against genetics now. So does the team have any like animosity towards him on the other side, or are you just looking at him as normal opponents?
Maybe deep down, it's a little bit. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, we are just friends inside or outside the game. So, and we are just gonna try our best. We do like with any normal team. So.
And you're coming into this phase, as everybody is, right? A very big change that just happened on Tuesday. What are your thoughts on this meta right now and the way that things have gone?
I think it has been really interesting. I think all the changes, all the recipes, all like the new like Titans mechanics, like the repeating, etc. I think it's really refreshed to the game. Yeah. All this change and everything, and I'm always excited to try things out and see how they fall. And it's exactly about the meta. I don't really have like a fully opinion now, but I will just get maybe one later on. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see it as this tournament unfolds, right? Because even you guys are trying to figure things out. Well, man, I'm sure we're all excited to watch it just as much as you are excited to play. So thanks for your time. Good luck in your games. We'll go back to the desk.
And I think at least for probably this week, maybe even towards like week 1 of SPL, that's kind of become the recurring thing is, what is the meta right now? We've kind of seen little glimpses here and there of what some players might think are really strong. I think Charon's probably the one constant that we have seen so far in at least our first set of the day. But outside of that, it kind of feels like the world's been opened up a little bit more, as we heard from Baskin and from Jarcorrr. The introduction of recipes really kind of spices things up. It allows you to really kind of change up maybe some of your dynamic in each of the lanes out there. It allows you to maybe swap around some itemization over anything. And so I'm interested to see how the Camelot Kings, because this is a team that over the course of their history, we talk about these guys being, the objective-minded team. These are the guys who are going to sit back, they're going to wait for 25, 30 minutes, and they're just going to out-team fight you. But we've been noticing, Charlie, that over the course, at least in this set, if we even go back to the Salt tournament we had in the previous 2 weekends, it's been a lot more action in the early game.
That has been a plus in my mind, right? There was one game today so far where we had to sit until like 10 minutes before we saw first blood. There's been a lot of early action, which means that early pressure, late game builds, not as impactful, right? They're still good. Of course, you are going to get to late game. You still want to have that good late game build, but no more tablets, right? No more sitting back and just farming. A lot of, Book of Thoth and Spear of Desolation trying to come out the gate swinging. These mid laners are going to like things like that. Of course, don't have to go necessarily that full shred or crit, but we've seen some ability-powered ADCs coming through as well. So a lot of interesting stuff. I think these recipes have opened up a lot of different doors gameplay-wise. You talked about the Charon. I think the Raijin is also a topic of conversation. That has been a constant considering the changes that have come to this god. We know BigManTingz and Pegon both probably would like to get their hands on that pick just to see how it handles in an SPL setting, considering the cooldown changes as well.
Yeah, it has been a while since Raijin's been meta. I think it was all the way back in really Season 8, wherever his real rise up was, and then now kind of the fallback immediately after. But up against the Camelot Kings is going to be the Oni Warriors, and the only change that's come their way is what we've been talking about a lot. Their support. No longer do they have Awesome Jake on their roster. It'll now be genetics here for the Oni Warriors, but the remainder of that core is still there. The other 4 players still rounding out their roster. So I think for me, kind of the biggest question mark is, what kind of new stuff does genetics offer to this team compared to Awesome Jake? I think shot calling is something that genetics has always kind of had in his wheelhouse, something that he's always been a big proponent of. But I think also a lot of, we're going to call it kind of pick and build theory, I would say. Kind of God and build theory has always been something that genetics does. He's always playing something wacky. I'm not going to really consider what he was doing during Divisional and Roll Stars to be any indication of what we'll see now. But he's one of the few supports that's out there. He has just such a deep god pool and can really flex stuff that we're not used to seeing over there.
Yeah, that's very true. Is constantly trying to find new ways to play the support role, and at the very least, I think comms could be a big reason Genetics was considered for this team and picked up. Just trying to add a little bit of level of extra, voices that they can listen to, because this team already seemed pretty difficult to rein in. We've gotten to cast a lot of Oni Warriors games on their massive win streak, and it did seem at times where they would just overstep, make a questionable play. They'd have massive leads and do something that is just so outlandish, and then it would work just because of raw skill and mechanical, prowess alone. I'm wondering if Genetics will enhance that, or try and put a stop to it, or just go along for the ride. Either way, he's got that same mechanical prowess, right? As a support player, widely considered one of the best, sometimes even the best support player in the world. So I think that it could only, with time, be a net positive. It all just depends on exactly how the Oni Warriors wrap around this mine. I'm curious as well. I think that meta has already been brought up in topic of conversation. Early objective play has been something the Oni Warriors have been known for. We just saw a couple 17-minute FGs. The Oni Warriors were doing that really before anyone else. So could be exactly what they're looking for.
And at least here for the Oni Warriors, do have to give a shout, something that Gormizer mentioned earlier. I had to double check and look up to make sure I had the correct stat. Panitom only 2 kills away from 2,000 competitive careers. Or competitive kills in his
2,000 careers?
2,000 careers. This man's been jumping career to career more than your average college student at this point. But
that's wild. I can't believe it.
But no, 2 kills away from 2,000 competitive career kills here for Panitom. We'll see. And if history is any indication for Panitom, likely we'll be seeing those 2 kills come in this game. But lined up against him here. The Camelot Kings opposite side, CaptainTwig, has kind of been a little back and forth with his playstyle. Sometimes we see a very aggressive CaptainTwig kind of play. Sometimes we see a little bit more passive, wait till. Sometimes we see this more kind of setup-oriented style of play CaptainTwig goes. Really feels like it really just depends on sometimes the day of the week, but also maybe even sometimes the direct match-to-match.
I mean, that's the biggest smile I've seen on Twig's face in a while. So I'm thinking we might see a different version. Hopefully, that highly aggressive hard carry jungler that we know and love. Twig, I like how you said it, has been on and off, hot and cold. Those are the kind of terms that have been used pretty much about the entirety of the Camelot Kings. I'll bet, you know what? I'd say Tingz has been pretty consistently like on par level-wise to just about everyone he's been facing. Even if the Camelot Kings are falling down, BigManTingz is usually finding that farm, finding that damage regardless. So maybe just a bastion of hope, a bastion of hope, I should say, in that mid lane. But with that being said, I still think this could be one of the more interesting sets of the week. Not only because Genetics was on the Kings and is now on the Oni Warriors, but also just because I'm expecting to see the Kings sort of trend upwards again. That has been an exciting thought, considering how it's been such a long time since we've seen them play.
Not only a long time since we've seen the Kings play, but really since we've seen the Kings kind of succeed more than anything. You know,
Yeah.
I kind of brought up at the start, it was a 4-0 kickoff, at least here for the Camelot Kings. They get knocked out of the initial kickoff tournament at the beginning of the phase, but then they go 4-0 to start. And then it was a 1-5, and then they don't really get anything going in the playoffs, and then nothing really for themselves as far as Masters was concerned either. So I think a lot of Camelot Kings fans hoping for a resurgence here for the team. And we got picks and bans for game number 1 between the Camelot Kings and the Oni Warriors. All eyes here, maybe on these first few bans to kind of see what some of the priority is amongst the players. And I think this one here has right to do so between the games that you're playing at home, between at least what we've been able to see, even despite the losses that came from the Gilly Gliders earlier on this pick. Really feels like Olorun has found a home back in the meta right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't really seen the best Olorun gameplay just yet because I think he still does have the same issue he's always had where he's very easy to dive, but the changes to his kit, the changes to some of the itemization that he's been able to build, and as well as just the amount of safety that is available in that duo lane seems to be the reason that Olorun is back, at least for now. Raijin, already discussed. His buffs were also pretty crazy. Stack that with Bountiful Bow. Cooldowns can be absurd. Don't want to have to deal with it. The Camelot Kings are clearly looking for something else. The Oni Warriors, though, remember, they're not in first pick. They have to worry about what's about to be grabbed here, and they're more so focused on Hebo, which has been extremely prominent, and that Chernobog that has been popping up time and time again now that this patch has come through. I think Gooseberry's on top of some of his changes, those auto attacks, that second ability really does just insta-clear the wave, and then Cherno can just use his one and all of his other abilities to poke you out and try and force 1v1s. Can be a very disastrous in lane.
So Cherno and Hebo for the Oni Warriors is their bans. Camelot Kings take away Olorun and Raijin, which has been the hot topic for the mid lane with all the changes that came his way. Give him the extra attack speed, also his basic attacks reduce his cooldowns. Just made Raijin feel a little bit more threatening there in the mid lane. Thor banned out by the Camelot Kings. A little bit of small amount of nerfs came Thor's way. A little bit less base damage on the hammer. I believe the ultimate got a little less scaling on it as well, but still seems that he is one of those favorite gods to still have his flexibility between the jungle and that solo lane. Most often, we haven't seen him go to solo. So one final ban here for the Oni Warriors. We saw Charon ban in game number 1 of our first set, picked up in the back half on games 2 and 3 of our previous one. And unless we see it banned here by the Oni Warriors, and we won't, it'll be a Freya, so 3 Hunters essentially banned away, 2 Magical, and then Chernobog rounding out the physicals. Could be potentially seeing what the value of Charon is for some of these other teams.
Definitely something that Camelot Kings could grab. Gotta discuss it if Quig wants to try and pilot this pick, or they want to just let this one go and grab something like the Pele, for example, which has been extremely prominent as well. It will just be the Wukong, sort of sticking with the old meta top pick. Remember, it was a lot of Yorm, a lot of Wukong that was driving us in the previous patch. Oni Warriors could grab Charon Pele here, and I think that could be very scary if that's something that Genetics wants to grab. But if I know Genetics, even though he's on a team like the Warriors, he doesn't have to grab his support pick top 1, top 2. He could save it for last and just bait out bans and not have a care in the world. It's very rare that if it wasn't like Yemoja's prime, that a genetics pick is getting first grabbed.
There's few players in the league that you can sit down, watch, what, 5, 6, maybe more bans go his way, go to that player's way, and you go, man, this guy's got nothing left in the tank. They banned everything out. There's very few that you can see that many dedicated bans, and then they just pick up another god out of the blue and just absolutely run down and get a game win with it. I remember looking back to one game where Genetics had 7 bans allocated his way. He picks up a Cerberus support and carries the game after that one. You look at players like Paul similarly in the mid lane. So it maybe is interesting seeing that Yemoja is top priority here for the Oni Warriors, grabbing a pick for Genetics right away. But pairing it with that Artemis, who we've been seeing a different build style path to it. Traditionally, we think Artemis, think, okay, a lot of attack speed, a lot of auto attack damage, some crit thrown in there. We've been seeing a little bit more of the ability Artemis kind of popping its way through.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense that Yemoja, of course, you have double the amount of waves of Charon. At that point, you're just twice the god. So it's pretty clear why that one was overlooked. In reality, I think Genetics has liked this pick for a long time, can control the map so easily. If you're looking for control, which Artemis loves, getting anyone close to Tusky is a good call. Wrapping them up in River's Rebuke could be the play as well. I mean, I really did think that there'd be a lot of different builds Artemis could look to because of the gooseberries, but has been a lot of this Artemis full ability damage. With that being said, the Camelot Kings, remember, they passed over the Charon once. They went in for the Wukong. Does that mean that they don't care about it at all? Or does that mean that they're trying to grab it here in the top 2? Is Variety just going to take this Wukong? Again, if we think about the last time we saw these players, there was some jungle Wukong being played. So that could be something CaptainTwig looks towards. But it will be the Apollo. Follow that up with a Charon. Camelot Kings grabbing some global presence in the top 3.
Well, we can now talk about Apollo, because haven't really seen much of him at least in our first set. No play, nothing like that. We can talk about some of the buffs that came Apollo's way, maybe why we are seeing him after what feels like quite some time, since he's really kind of popped his way out. Gets increased projectile speed in his passive now whenever it's active. His first ability moves a little bit faster, hits a little bit harder, gets some extra physical, or gets some extra magical protections, I should say, whenever he does pop that mez. And then at least for his Across the Skies, that feels like that's another one of the real big buffs that came that way, where it feels like he moves or he crashes down a little bit faster, gets a little bit extra mana up top because he doesn't cost quite as much there. So I'm interested to see how Apollo plays now with all the buffs that has come his way. At least in a lot of games I've been playing, he's kind of been that top priority pick. A lot of people have been going towards him. Feels like a real good bully in the lane, typically to match up against Chernobog.
Certainly could be. On the flip side, the Thoth gets locked in. I love Pegon's Thoth, but man, into Charon, this matchup can feel very sketchy, right? I mean, you get evade and punish once. Bao's going to help you out a bit, but if that ult comes through from Charon, it's very difficult. It covers up essentially the whole lane if used properly. Can interrupt your ult if you're trying to charge it. There's a lot of annoyance that could come from this Thoth pick. I think that the Oni Warriors might be trying to keep this Thoth alive. That could be what we're looking towards in the bottom 2 here. Maybe like a supporty style jungler, or just hard carry away, leave Pegon by himself because he can handle himself, and look to also play through Panitom. That seems more like the Oni Warriors' MO. Something like the Susano, which has been taken away, the Awelix, which has been taken away. Still, overlooked currently is going to be that Pele. That being said, though, the Camelot Kings have to reveal. And I've seen the Apollo played a fair bit in mid. We know that BigManTingz likes to go towards Hunters. Could that be something he's looking for? Or we just see a traditional mage locked in the bottom 2. Definitely could be just something like the Discordia, for example, I know that Tings likes to go to. Those are all different options here.
Will be Pele for the Oni Warriors. So that Panitom and Pegon have both played to extent in the past. This time, though, seeming with the Thoth already drafted in. A pick for Panitom. So now we have to wait what will come Sot's way. Though I guess potentially we could see maybe Sot take this Pele in the solo. We've seen a little bit of it in the past. I know that Sot is a player who does like to kind of play outside the box of the norm. So we'll see where that Pele does end up landing. On the opposite side, you called it perfectly. Discordia currently hovered by BigManTingz and will be locked in. But also this Bastet hover, and I think that is also the extra one to kind of keep eyes on, because not a whole lot of changes have come Bastet's way, but seeing her picked up, I mean, how do you kind of feel about Bastet with this draft?
I think that Bastet is in an interesting spot where you could just go the full ability build as per usual. It's got great dive in the backline. If you're trying to get to Thoth, if you're trying to get to Artemis, that's going to come with relative ease. And you have options as well. You can jump in, proc that Huntress of Bast when Artemis drops Tusky, or jump forward, bait out the Tusky, leap back, don't get hit by it, and then try and engage later on. All the while, Thoth, I don't even got to explain how annoying that can be, right? You're getting pounced on by Bastet, still getting chased down with the cat, with the Huntress of Bast, so not a bad look here. Safe damage, not going to have too much 100 to 0 unless you're really far ahead. I think that Bastet still does have a bit of a fall-off point unless you are just nuts with the farm, but safe CC and survivability seems to be the topic of conversation here from the Camelot Kings. Throw Wukong, throw Charon, and throw Bastet into that mix. Last pick is going to be the chalk, though. You were talking about what could possibly be the grab there for SOT in the Oni Warriors. I'm thinking about what it provides. Sure, the attack speed slows can be annoying if you're dealing with an Apollo. Chalk can get to the backline with relative ease. Is lacking a bit of damage if you go that Vital Amplifier build, but heck, maybe you just go Bluestone Transcendence. That was a build that was pretty popular for a while, and that build on Chalk can absolutely chunk some of these carries once you get online.
Now, one thing you were kind of bringing up earlier as a potential, and I kind of want to maybe dive into that potential a little bit here, was the Sun Wukong in the jungle comparatively. We've seen Bastet in the jungle, we've seen Bastet in the solo lane. In fact, there's a whole meta where Bastet and Kleena kind of dominated the solo lane. So kind of looking at the comp that the Camelot Kings have built, now seeing that this Bastet is drafted in here, do you think that this is one where the Bastet will be going into the jungle, or do you still see some potential flex for this Wukong to maybe take over that spot?
Just for my money, because it's variety in particular, I think Twig probably takes the Bastet, but if it was any other team, yeah, I could easily see that swap happening. It all just depends on, you know, the players and their proficiency. I don't doubt that Twig could play either of them and can do it pretty confidently, but I'm thinking variety in particular wants to just take that Wukong, wants to sit safe. For some reason, thinking back on this season and watching variety play, he just gets camped a lot. And if you want to be any god when you're getting camped, it's probably Wukong at the moment. He has incredible safety. He's going to be able to farm. He's going to be able to trade. He's going to be able to survive. Even if he's getting invaded, he should be just fine because you're probably building into something like Glad Shield Soul Eater anyway. So you're going to find your way into some extra damage. You're going to be able to clear the wave and just sit under tower with Somersault Cloud and stay relatively healthy.
So we kind of understand what the Camelot Kings want to do. They want to go for a lot of poke, that style of play for themselves against the Warriors. But what's that Warriors kind of identity of play? What's the kind of mindset that they're likely loading into this game with, going up against what the Camelot Kings have drafted?
I'm going to pretend mentally that this is the same Oni Warriors team that we have seen all season, just because I imagine 4 out of 5 players are the same, right? That early game play style, just run it down. We're going to find early pressure. We're going to look for early 2v2s in mid. We're going to try and find those fights. I don't think too much of that changes. The only difference is maybe grouping up and playing around Yemoja a bit more at like level 12. Before that, I imagine a lot of it's going to stay the same.
So whenever we kind of had these Yemojas, pop in, there's always, 2 potential relic conversations. It's Curse Donk to be able to deal with some of the healing, or we talk about, the shell kind of popping up, being able to get a Phantom Shell. Do you think that, given the composition the Kings have, that a Phantom Shell is a necessity for this, or do you think that that's a relic that maybe the Kings can forego against the Warriors in this game?
It's difficult because if you're counting on your team to just outplay the Yemoja ult, you're going to get caught at least once, right? Especially with someone as talented as Genetics on the pick. So I think it's safer just to get Phantom Shell. Even if you don't need it for being able to walk through walls, it's still beneficial as a survivability tool, as a trying to deal with some of the extra damage that some of these characters like Thoth will provide. So I think just grab it regardless. It's not 100% necessary. You can play around it, but I'm thinking just grab it because you can. Maybe you throw it in the second relic slot. You don't really need it until level 12 as long as you're positioning correctly. And then, if you need it, you upgrade it quickly.
Now this Thoth being picked up in here, haven't seen a whole lot of Thoth as of recent, but some of the changes that came his way, a little bit more damage that comes from that glyph, from that Final Judgment. Maybe the one that kind of at least jumps out to me for the early game, Charlie, is that first ability doing a little bit more damage over to the jungle minions, able to kind of help him out a little bit more there. So we'll have to kind of see if maybe that boosts up this Thoth more than anything. We'll have to see if the Oni Warriors can really utilize that for the early game, help themselves out here against the Camelot Kings. It's a best of 5 between these two teams to see which one will move on into the semifinals. Obviously still waiting for tomorrow's opponent to be decided for themselves. Charlie, what are your thoughts on it here? Don't even have the opportunity to do so. Instead, we'll jump right into game number 1. We got the Camelot Kings and the Oni Warriors, and to bring it to you, we got Gormizer and Mifflin.
Well, welcome back, everyone, as we're going to be jumping into the game here again. And as you may have noticed towards the end, because of some technical difficulties, that is a full remake between the Kings and the Warriors. So we're resetting back a minute before minions will spawn, give the teams a small reset period. Luckily, Mifflin, not much had happened in the game just yet, and especially nothing that was full-on intentional in that game.
No, not a single thing.
And so, in this case, it's going to be right back to where we started. We had already talked about the Chalk. We talked a little bit about the Apollo. I'm going to ask you about the Thoth, because we've seen him, I think, quite a bit in, you know, these fringe matches. Now it feels like, especially with some of the changes, he's kind of re-elevated up towards the top. Is it the bow? Is it changes of the Thoth? Itemization? Well, what's making him so good now?
Well, he's going to have 30% CDR at like the 4-minute mark,
Yeah.
which is pretty good. If you go Spear of Desolation first item, it's going to be like 40% or something like crazy like
That's
that,
pretty
right?
good.
That's pretty good. If he gets like a blue mask, we're overcapping before we're even on second item, so that's pretty good too. Just allows you to poke. I feel like poke gods are just in a really good spot right now because they just have access to it more often than they used to. So Thoth playing outside of the enemy's range tends to lend itself to that poke play style. Will be difficult for anyone to line it up towards the center of the map. BigManTingz in the Discordia has a little bit less ability to play as far back as Pegon will. Otherwise, I mean, you could say the same thing of like Artemis. She's going to have all that CDR pretty quickly. We had seen a slight different build in the previous set. Was a Transcendence Jotun-style Artemis. This time around it seems to be a little bit more auto-attack focused from Netrioid.
And we'll see if he ends up having the same impact, I guess, is really the right phrase here, right? If he's going to be the one that really does get to hammer home some of the changes. We've been seeing a lot of Artemis. And I think it was even you who had said that you've been watching streamers, and some of them are more than accepting or more than willing to accept, you know what, we can try ability-based. Some of them, I don't know if I want to call it stuck in their ways, but hold on to what they know and know what works. And Netrioid's going to provide that. I'm really interested to see both of these teams. I mean, Jarcorrr now laning with Quig. In the last set, we saw the support spend more time in duo than I feel like I've seen in entire sets in the past. And you have to talk about what Quig is going to be bringing not only to that dynamic as a duo, but to the team. And Genetics on the other side. We know, or at least have grown to know, Genetics is someone who is a very efficient and vocal shot caller. And the Warriors had kind of admitted they didn't necessarily have, let's say, an individual, right? Somebody would call something out, and either everybody would agree or they wouldn't, and that would depend on whether or not the call was followed. So I'm curious if the dynamic for the Warriors is going to change having this new support and having someone who is a World's MVP now being able to kind of head up the roster.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Is Genetics going to fit in well? Is he going to be able to take up that leadership role? If that's the case, does he know how to steer this ship? It's a completely different boat this time around. As well as the fact that maybe Genetics isn't going to be that guy. Maybe he's just playing. I think it is likely that he is going to take that leadership role, just knowing Genetics and how he operates or how he likes to operate, wants to be in charge. I believe the phrase that he'd used to me last time I talked to him was like, I sometimes consider myself the main character, which was the most modest way to say the least modest thing on the planet. But outside of that, where does that leave the Camelot Kings as far as leadership is concerned? Where are they at? Who's stepping up? Is someone else stepping up in comms? I doubt it's Quig. Quig's coming into one of the most veteran teams. You've got CaptainTwig, who's played at just about every single world championship. You've got guys who've been in the league for as long as the league has existed. And Quig being a rookie, I mean, that's got to be a nerve-wracking situation for him where the first month or so maybe he's thinking, well, I'll just sit back, listen, observe, learn, and try and grow from this situation and then eventually slot in? Or is he expected immediately to essentially just fill the role that Genetics had previously? I think it is such an interesting dynamic to be thrust upon these teams so late in the year.
And as Jarcorrr had kind of alluded to. He didn't get too much detail there with us, but different dynamic was what he had said for the entire team, which is pretty easy to imagine. Different dynamic for Twig, too, just in life roles as of lately. With these two teams, aggression is kind of what we got to know the Warriors for throughout the first phase. Pretty much up until they met the Ferrymen. It seemed like that was their MO, and then the Ferrymen were just a brick wall they could not hurdle. A little bit of poke exchange there around the left mid camps from Twig and Panitom. And I'm going to be honest, Mifflin, I was thinking, you know what, Panitom, 2 kills from 2,000, probably not playing through his head, but after the way set 1 went, we're going to get 6 minutes in, and he's going to hit that mark, and then we'll see where the rest of the game goes from there. Now we're approaching 4.5, and both of these teams seem more than happy to do exactly what they're doing at this pace, right? Level 6s, pretty much almost all across the board, duo lane, a little late to the party there, but it is more farm-focused right now for both squads.
It is. That's got to be the leadership of genetics at play. Guys, we could run it down.
Pulling the reins back as hard
We
as you
really
can.
don't need to, guys. We got a great scaling composition, 2 late-game hyper carries, a phenomenal support in Yemoja, great initiation on SOT. Like, you know, let's not get too crazy. Don't necessarily need to do it as of right now, but things will have to pick up eventually. You don't want to give the Camelot Kings the first jump, especially considering how some of their CC could apply. I'm looking across the board. It's really genetics most susceptible to first contact. If CaptainTwig could rotate through, get that Huntress of Bass, pull them out of position. Prophetic Cloak's good after it stacks. It's okay. It's okay off rip, but really does need a little bit of that defense stacked up before you find value from that item. So genetics, a little bit squishy right now. Needs to play cautious. Doesn't have those beads. It's just a meditation.
Oh, a little skirmish on right for the blue buff. Twig falling low. Panitom looking for it. Axe
block.
over the wall. And Sot's going to pick up first blood. Now the invade is on the other foot. Panitom, Sot walk in, take the blue buff. They're going to find first blood, steal a buff away, walk back to lane like nothing happened.
Yeah, that's such a tough situation for Bastet. Sealing buffs is such an awkward spot throughout the early game. Get some points in a pounce. No one's out-confirming you on anything, right? Doesn't feel great to have to use your leap to confirm something, but you would at least grab it for yourself. But Bastet's clear at this portion of the game. I mean, you could see it. Just not exactly ideal. You got to wait for the bleed from claws. It's taking your entire kit. Still takes them a little while, so I think a bit overzealous in that decision from CaptainTwig to get aggressive on the right side of the map. Probably just doesn't know that Panitom is as close as he is and gets caught unaware. Panitom, on the other hand, Pele's there. We're at it.
Yeah.
We're at the Pele time. Jotuns is done. Time to get active. Probably Soul Leader in next slot, so a little bit of scaling to come a bit later on. But as of right now, should have a pretty significant advantage in the fight. Should.
Yeah, should. We'll see. If he does, you've got Discordia right around the wall, and that ward coverage, just enough from the Warriors to make sure that you know better than to step up into that engagement. What could have been a very quick 2v1. Instead, separates things up. Warriors find themselves about 300 gold ahead towards the tail end of it.
Did you see SOT's build? I'm sorry. I don't normally hone in this much on itemization, but it is so different already here in the Season of Celebration. Gauntlet of Thebes in first slot. I mean, if you're concerned about getting shoved into tower, and Sot's been in tower, that's one way to get that stacked up, I suppose. It allows that Prophetic Cloak on the other side to not force genetics into a double slow item start. We've seen Prophetic right into Thieves, and neither one of them gets stacked in a timely manner. This is going to allow genetics, if he so chooses, to forego Thieves. Perhaps look at a little bit more damage, a little bit more aggression, or just go straight into like a dedicated aura item, Sovereignty, Heart Ward, something along those lines. Certainly a departure from the standard, though. That's not something you normally see in the solo lane.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last time I saw someone that wasn't a support by Thebes in general, and it's been ages at this point. But I look up towards where he was standing, he was under his tower, right? Every single time. Maybe makes sense. Now it's Variety, though, who's having the chase put on. Slow from Shock, keeps him locked down a little bit. There's going to be the silence, but the Somersault Cloud comes out. The CC immunity from Variety gives them just enough space to disengage from the Warriors. They don't seem to want to disengage. Blue buff spawning in on right. It's still a 3v2, Genetics having rotated over. A little bit of extra damage, good zoning. And the blue buff is secured and stolen away by the Warriors. Now, Mifflin, that gave a little bit of time. Maybe some wiggle room over on left. Jarcorrr just a bit shy of picking up Netrioid. But to showcase where the pressure is going to be,
Yikes.
great Riptide from Genetics around the red buff. Keeps Quig and Tings engaged. And he's looking for more. Maybe he's not pulling back the reins anymore. Oh, the Kings having to play carefully and cautiously under tower.
Man, I'm loving all these little micro interactions we're seeing. Genetics, of course, that Riptide, beautiful, but also the positioning. Puts Pegon in a spot where he's threatening ultimate onto BigManTingz or onto CaptainTwig if he sticks around. Gets a lot of damage into that tier 1 tower, and I believe denies 3 minions of gold, if not experience as well. And so BigManTingz probably suffering slightly there. Otherwise, did you see that small combo in the solo lane? Panitom channels the knockup to try and set up for SOT's ultimate. If we can catch him before he lands, he won't get the opportunity to get into that air for variety on the Somersault Cloud. Unfortunately, slightly mistimed. So SOT does connect with the CC immune Sun Wukong, but these small micro plays working together, showing how this composition is going to work in the late game, how they want to chain their CC. I think a good showing from the Oni Warriors immediately that they haven't been affected too much. They're still capable of playing their aggressive style, even with Awesome Jake no longer on this team, even with Genetics, a much slower player playing with them. This is still the Oni Warriors doing Oni Warriors.
Yeah, there's only so much that you could slow Pegon Panitom down before they just, run away with it. Maybe even opening up the conversation for Sot now that he's fully stacked those Thebes to be able to actually stay aggressive over here in solo. Although it's a little bit back and forth. Slaughterhouse Chalk, speaking of which, Skin, me and you were talking about a lot, I believe, during, what was that, Roll Stars?
That's right.
And something that we might see, the Sticks rolling through the map right now. Not going to find the lockdown. Instead, Genetics is the target. One good Riptide disengages. Sot looping around to find the Kings out of place. Has Pegon beside him. Shots from the Thoth. Finding a decent amount of damage. There's a River's Rebuke. Locks in too. And it's a great lockdown from Genetics, but he needs a little more follow-up. And you've got the rotation finally. Panitom's here. Tings gets taken down, and Sot still running rampant in the backline. Variety zones out Pegon, keeps the Thoth away. And that changes the dynamic of this fight. Split up are the Warriors. Now a 2v2. The knock-up from Variety gets some good damage out onto Genetics.
Ooh.
Sot continues his onslaught in mid, continues going down, and finds a kill onto Twig. It's 3-0, a double kill as he picks up a 4th. And the Warriors solo laner is running away with it. Jarcorrr lands in 4. Mez is good onto 2. And the dash, the moves, get him out of there. Sot didn't seem to get the memo, the rest of the team did. They back away. He takes a couple tower shots, but he's 4-0, Mifflin. And just as we were talking about earlier, you have to see it on the skin itself that he's rocking the blood of his enemies.
Man, the Oni Warriors, they play that team fight just beautifully. SOT, the camera's on him the whole time, and for good reason. He casted 5, 6, 7 axe tosses throughout that fight. That's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. CC immunity much easier to come by. Sekhmet Scepter, of course, helping out a good deal with that. Every time he heals himself, gets a little bit of cooldown off of his non-ultimate abilities, so he's sticking around in that fight consistently, incredibly tanky, separates the entire engagement. Genetics, just a phenomenal River's Rebuke, and from there, all the carries, their job's been done for them. When the front line is performing at that level, it's easy to walk up and press left click or line up one of your massive AoE abilities. And so the Oni Warriors take the first clean team fight of the match, but we'll see whether or not they can grab the Stygian Beacon.
Well, the Beacon, a little over half charged for the Warriors. Now it's turned around. Kings have the presence. Reset it back to neutral. Starting to gain a little territory. Sot's rotated in. Sot's looking for number 5. Forces Twig to fall back. Variety's on the Somersault Cloud, relatively deep. Finds extra damage onto Pegon. Returns with a root. Meanwhile, Genetics has been on the beacon the whole time. Gets it right back up to about 2/3 in favor of the Warriors. Rotation.
Oh, this is
Here's
bad.
Netrioid, comes in with the Tusky, finds some massive stuns. River's Rebuke locks in only Quig, but locks out the rest of the Kings. Quig throws out the River Sticks, finds 2 with a hit, saves Variety's life. The Beacon, now 3/4 there for the Warriors. That's a little bit of a balance, but they capture it up, and yeah, Sot's going to fall back, and that's going to be the team retreating.
We say fall back, teleports in, but only takes a little bit of poke. Sot once more, separating that entire team fight. CaptainTwig no ultimate, which means he poses no threat, and so SOT should be allowed to fully disengage once more. This Chalk has just been a menace, man. Just creates so much space. Walks in, ignores the River's Rebuke, throws the axe out of it to poke the carries anyway. Jarcorrr, just a little bit too much damage for him to stick around. Wasn't allowed to stay in that team fight whatsoever. And SOT's clearly on do whatever I want mode. A 2-level lead out of the solo lane and incredibly tanky already. But I do need to point this out, and it's something I'd expected to see a little bit. I think Genetics forgot to pick himself up a bit of food there. No recipe for the support player.
Oh, wow.
And theory craft all you want, you can't convince me that's intentional. There is no benefit to not getting that. So just missing out on a little bit of stats. You'd think he'd pick one up eventually. Maybe just, sunk cost fallacy. Just, it's been 14 minutes. What's the point now?
This is where we have to out him. Genetics never learned to cook. And so recipes, it might as well just be a foreign language to him, written down.
What's a bow?
What exactly is a bow? It's gonna actually, interesting. We knew we'd see one eventually. It was just a matter of time of when it was going to be.
And it was our world champion MVP.
And it's the world champion MVP. The guy who has to come onto the Warriors and prove himself. He's 003.
Genetics haters are having a field day right now.
We'll see. So far, it doesn't seem to have slowed him down too much. He is a level down, though, Mifflin, and you can blame that one on the recipe. And literally nothing else, as you could imagine.
Oh, he's picked up a Thieves as well, Gore. So he'll be stacking that up slowly. You're going to have aura items no matter what. If SOT wants to be like solo dive in the backline, if anyone joins them, they'll get the aura of Thieves. Genetics can play a little bit further into his own backline, into a peel role, so they'll get the aura defense there. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I think it's a really good strategy from the Oni Warriors immediately. Pegon probably be benefiting from. Genetics has gone to Thieves more than anybody else.
Yeah.
But still, keeping Pegon alive, I think some people might call that a win condition.
I would call that a win condition, or I'd be inclined to agree with some people in that case.
It's me. I'm some people.
Yeah, you're some people, and I'm agreeing with you. It is going to be, again, fun to watch how it continues to shift. Most people have finished their recipes up to this point in the lobby. And by most, I mean everybody sans Jarcorrr, who's finishing his up, and of course Genetics, who just straight up doesn't have one. We also haven't gotten to see, well, let me rephrase that. We have seen Jarcorrr quite a bit. We just haven't gotten to see him do too much because it feels like a lot of the action has been on the right side of the map. And when he has been able to come in, it's been just a shy too late to actually get anything done. Do you think the rotation, we saw Netrioid drop Tusky in the middle of a huge fight, and that feels like it made a huge impact? What can Jarcorrr do to try and keep up with that?
Get there first. That's priority numero uno. Make sure you're there first before Caledonian goes down. You can even see it in the lane. Wasn't willing to step up to wave while Netrioid was there in spite of a slight advantage in experience. It's just not a matchup that Apollo is really favored in. And so, getting to the fight before Netrioid can get involved is the primary strength of this Apollo pick as of now. You don't necessarily want to force too many fights before you can stack up some of that crit. Hidden Blade already picked up for Jarcorrr, so it's going to take a little while until he's able to finish up either a Rage, Deathbringer, whatever he elects to move in towards. But in that time, in the interim, where does that leave the Oni Warriors? Burn it through gold.
And they are going to secure that one, though not without an attempt from the Kings to try and take it away. Gold Fury, and previously, and I kind of glanced over it, but the Pyromancer that was picked up by him, Runic Bomb goes over to Sot. Both unanswered so far by the Kings.
And that's, again, that's the macro play that Genetics is so known for. The ability to say, hey, we could just do an objective. I know we haven't killed anybody just yet, but we could, we can try it. Heat check them, see if they show up, and it just works.
A very simple, if they fight us, we win that fight. If they don't fight us, we get the objective. A win-win scenario. Here's the matchup you need. Jarcorrr finds the shots and gets what he needs on the fadeaway. Finally finds a kill, and it's a solo at that on the left lane. The variety on the other side, forced into the somersault cloud. The rest of the Kings have been in a similar position. But you know what? We'll ignore that one in favor of the win. Jarcorrr gets the tower as well. It's a great play for the Apollo.
It just doesn't make any sense. Statistically, it doesn't make any sense. Netrioid gets to choose when he gets his additional attack speed, thanks to it being a stim in kit. He had also already finished up crit, had access to both relics, and Jarcorrr said, it doesn't matter, you won't hit as many auto attacks as I do. It just doesn't matter, buddy. You can try again later. It's a fail not, by the way, for Jarcorrr to finish up his first crit item. Now finally matching Netrioid in the build, post soloing him in lane. what a statement win for Jarcorrr and the duo to put the Camelot Kings on the board, keep them afloat. And the Camelot Kings still haven't even fallen that far behind. Objectives and fights going to the Oni Warriors. 3-kill deficit. Doesn't matter. 2K gold at 20. Yeah. That's just about nothing.
Manageable, especially this late in. Beacon respawned. So that's getting channeled now by Genetics, who had to step off it a little bit earlier. Doesn't seem like they're going to get threatened this time around, though. Second Beacon of the game will also go over to the Warriors. I don't know what to expect over this other than, yeah, the knock up and disengage from Variety should be good. 0-0-4 for Panitom. And, of course, the guy who's been picking up all the kills, all 4 of them are here on Sot. He's looking for number 5, and he's just staying under the tower. At this point, because of the CC, goes for the ult, finds the silence, but a great amount of lockdown. The Kings just CC him to death. The tower does its job. And finally, a shutdown onto Sot.
Yeah, that is a dictionary definition of doing too much from SOT. Just walks into that tower, was not respecting the damage output from the Camelot Kings or the follow-up CC that would have come after that ultimate. If CaptainTwig isn't there, maybe Sot makes it out alive, but even then, big maybe. And being the Runic Bomb holder for the Oni Warriors, that does slow down their ability to either look at another Pyromancer or siege the tier 1. Have to wait that full 40 seconds on SOT's respawn. I think should still, the Oni Warriors that is, keep up this aggressive pace. I'd like to see them group up immediately on this Pyromancer, force another engagement. And ADCs tend to tell the truth about these rotations. Netrioid already there. This is a full commit.
You've got Thoth damage. They're burning it.
So fast.
Presence from the Kings is going to be there, but it's going to be too late. Panitom's going to pick up that Runic Bomb. The Kings, though, looking for the fight. Apple goes wide from Tings. Panitom's still taking a lot of damage. Has to play carefully. Uses the ult for the disengage instead. Sot surrounded by 3. Netrioid seems to be the target. River's Rebuke thrown up. Here comes Apollo right down into Sot's waiting arms. Beads out the silence. Whoa. Gets some damage out onto Netrioid, but Netrioid still manages to walk away. Now Sot getting aggressive. Which has been a sentence that you could probably copy-paste and apply to any point of this game. And that's going to be enough to zone out the Kings. A lot used by both squads there, Mifflin. And yet no blood spilled. Yeah,
I think maybe a small disconnect there in target selection from the Camelot Kings. BigManTingz soloed Panitom. He's down to 10%. And CaptainTwig jumps over Panitom to go get involved in the jungle team fight. Gotta think if maybe just a claw connects, you're talking about a major win for the Kings.
Well, now dancing around the new Fire Giant pit. Wide open Variety. Knocked up and caught out. This could be the chase down. Shots are good from Pegon. And the solo laner for the Kings gone. Now Sot leading the way. It's a double kill for Pegon as the team surges forward. Netrioid tucks one onto his own belt, and it's 1 by 1. The Kings fall down. Tings, the last man left standing, and a Fire Giant wide open in the pit for the Warriors.
The Camelot Kings have got no way to fight back into this one. It was an zealous overstay from the Camelot Kings and the Fire Giant. The Oni Warriors just spearhead, initiate, and take the team fight cleanly. I didn't see a whole lot of fight back whatsoever, and that's with Quig starting the fight with a 4-man ultimate, by the way. Just not enough to slow down the Warriors, who absolutely run over the Kings cleanly in the engagement. And looking at the relics, I mean, there still was a few resources available to the Camelot Kings. Beads maintained on Twig, Cloak the Ascetic on Quig. That probably one of the more important ones that should be on cooldown. Would have helped a lot on that disengage, getting a bit more CDR to everyone nearby. Whereas the Oni Warriors do have to commit themselves pretty heavily there. You still have a few leftovers. Panitom and Netrioid holding onto their beats, probably the most important, meaning that you don't really need to slow down here. Fire Giant on all 5, grab a Fury on the way out because it'll happen quickly because we're back in a crit meta, and then start knocking down these structures.
Spread out right now from the Warriors. But Mifflin, I mean, like you said, they're in a good spot. Just have to figure out where they want to go. Looking at the map, left side seems to be where they're slowly maneuvering towards.
Is Fate Blessed Hoops back? Goodness, this is an exciting meta, man. There's so many new things.
A lot of item changes as well. I mean, and not even like that Fate Blessed Hoop got hit with changes, just the fact that it's here. Showcases a lot for you. Do you like it, though, for Genetics? Like, do you like where it's slotted in? Is he tanky enough to I guess, focus more on the healing?
I mean, that is about as tanky as you're going to get from 2 items, right? Prophetic and Gauntlet of Thieves, that's nearly as good as it gets. Maybe Spirit Robe needs to be in that conversation, but when you're able to establish a lead like this, a little bit of additional CDR, a little bit more survivability for your allies. I've always been a big Fate Blessed Hoops fan. So I think if Genetics thinks this is a good place to slot it, the only issue it had in the past is that it was slightly overvalued or undervalued compared to other items.
Yeah.
But when you've got a lead like this, I'm thinking you can build just about whatever you want in that slot. So props to Genetics, who again not only has gone for a slightly different build from Standard, not only has foregone a recipe, but has also completely broken the new age I have to max my relic support mentality. Usually it's first item done, max both my relics. Not the case. He doesn't care. What am I upgrading my shell for? I mean, what am I going to do? Spawn a wall? Can't do that. What am I upgrading my meditation for? Our first wave of cooldowns is already killing the enemies. Yeah. We don't need any more. Just cruise control for the Oni Warriors right now.
If anything, does he even have to use them? His team only has 2 deaths. Maybe he's the reason they only have 2 deaths. But as of right now, the pressure's just not on for him. Unfortunately for the Kings, the pressure is all on. Tier 2 in left, now Tier 2 in mid, taken down with this Fire Giant. Power play still going.
Watch Twig.
For a little over a minute here. Twig is on the side, looped around. And it's just poking out. Now should be noticed, but it's Bastet, right? You just leap over the wall, and you get a nice little disengage. Warriors, 2 runic bombs to their name, step up to the mid Phoenix. River's Rebuke comes out. That's going to give him plenty of space to just knock down the bird and retreat. And even though there were some ults thrown out by the Kings, not much in answer. In fact, Quig's gotten low, and now Panitom goes in, and it's number 2,000 on the board. Might as well make it 2001 as he picks up a 3rd kill this game. And now the team crumbling around the Kings. SOT looking for yet another. And the Warriors are going to clean up 3, start to pull back.
Yeah, do they have the resustain to go back into the Titan room? They don't have a Titan to kill. That's the primary issue there. What is it? The chains of Tartarus has been broken, so they've got to run down the center of the map. The Oni Warriors unfortunate that they wouldn't quite be able to leverage it into a game win there for themselves. Would have been a very fast start for them. Instead, go ahead, collect their own Titan, perhaps reset back to neutral. I'd like to see them grab that Pyromancer beforehand, and then take the spoils of war, which have put them at a significant 10,000 gold advantage. And that's still all real gold because nobody's 6-slotted just yet. The Camelot Kings are pretty far out of this one, Gore. It's going to take a lot. Jarcorr's going to land only crits from here on out. That's the thing. BigManTingz, you need a 3-man strife. It is long shot odds. And it's not even as if the Camelot Kings have got a great base defense composition. Discordia is all right. She's going to do great damage. She's good in the PvP, but keeping those waves out a little bit more difficult. CaptainTwig's really been struggling on this Bastet, nearing the bottom of the damage charts right now. 6,500, just not enough from him as of recent. I don't even think we've seen a Blink used. Maybe once or twice defensively, but I'm not sure that he's been able to initiate with it or get things started with a Huntress of Bast. The Camelot Kings just haven't found initiation anywhere. I mean, who's going to start the fight? It's the Oni Warriors. They're starting the fight. All of them, every time, forever. 1,000 years, Oni Warriors.
Chosen every single one, and I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. SOT, Genetics leading the way. I mean, the River's Rebukes. River's Rebukes? Is that the plural of River Rebuke?
He's rebuking Rivers.
Yeah, and you know what? It's working out well for him. It's locked down, and it has been difficult to manage. That last one really just creating enough zone to knock down the Phoenix. They only use 1 runic bomb, so you still got 2 in your inventory with that most recent Pyromancer going the way of the Warriors. And they're set right back up immediately on the Fire Giant. SOT's pushing down mid.
Does not care.
Has 2 around him.
This is ridiculous.
No care in the world.
That's disrespectful.
Variety's on right. The other 2 Kings are over on left, split pushing. He's winning Tier 2. And yeah, SOT...
It's not close.
Does not seem to have a care in the world. Now there's 4 Kings here. But he's also got backup. By the way, he also has Fire Giant at this point. 11-3 read the kills, 27.5 in. 11,000 gold for the Warriors. They're going to push that up towards 12. Picking up the Tier 2 on right. And Mifflin, they're knocking on the door of the right side Phoenix.
I mean, Panitom's really far from this fight, Gore. I mean, it hasn't stopped the Oni Warriors just yet.
This is to try and balance things.
It's going to take them a really long time. If the Camelot Kings spot him, and they haven't, no wave to spot him on, should be able to engage here, but they've got no clue.
Yeah, Variety, with that ward, should now know. At least that Panitom's not waiting in the wings. Instead, he's in the base. Viewed.
Wow.
Spotted. Falls back. Right side Phoenix is taking a little bit of poke. It's Nothing too serious just yet. Mid Phoenix is going to respawn soon, but you got fire minions, and now an engage from SoloOrTroll as he goes immediately into the back. Mid Phoenix again going to respawn, but they might not need to be worried about it at this point. River's Rebuke locks in 2 and keeps him away. The damage is good, but they've only killed off the 1 so far. Right side bird gone. Mid going to respawn and fall instantly. Warriors have to play it a little more cautiously. Fire minions coming down mid. All they need is one more pick, and they could potentially open up this base.
Man, it's just standard Oni Warriors MO right now. Just gotta cross those T's, dot those I's. Does it start with variety? Shouldn't be the case. I think he's safe.
And now Panitom goes to the back. Panitom gets a lot of damage for his team. Jarcorrr goes down, and the chase is on, locking him in the fountain as they DPS the Titan. 3 Kings left standing. 3 Kings
Reset.
so far doing enough damage. Reset now. It's on the
Sod,
side.
come on,
It's
man.
just bullying BigManTingz
This is
outside
illegal.
of the fountain. They need a little more damage. The Titan's still falling low, still trickling down. And that's going to do it for the Warriors. Game 1 of a best of 5. And Mifflin, it's 13-3.
That is a statement win, Gore. I mean, they won that game a long time ago. Let's be explicitly clear. It just takes a little while to go through the motions. The Oni Warriors dominate, manhandle the Camelot Kings. SOT a clear standout for me. I mean, the willingness to jump on enemy Phoenix line alone when you know you're completely alone. Your team's still working on the Fire Giant. You hear the Fire Giant sound effect go off, so now they know SOT's alone too, and they still couldn't win the fight. The Camelot Kings did not have any way to deal enough damage to actually scare SOT away. So what does SOT do? He sheepdogged them, bro. He literally sheepdogged them into their own fountain. That's ridiculous. That's illegal. It's not allowed. He tanked the Titan for like 15 seconds to box a guy that he would never kill to send a message.
Yeah.
That's illegal. It's not okay.
I don't think I could put it any better than that. And that's what happens when your shot goes 4-0. We were talking about the Thebes at the beginning of this with some question marks.
he's
I don't
tanky.
think I'm worried about
It works.
anymore.
It just shouldn't be allowed.
It just shouldn't be allowed. Unfortunately for the Kings, they got at least 2 more of those they'd have to deal with. And they need to go back to the books to figure out how to stop it. We'll see if they're going to find some sort of rebuttal after this quick break.
real. I rap it, I bag it, I pack it for sale. Got feeling on speed out, hit me to chill. I give it a thrill, I put it on film. Facade get applaud, that ain't real. Come to my section and flex, we can tell. I got a show and she dipping them nails. I'm flipping my L's, I know they can tell. I did it too major, they hit me for favors. Been him since the cable was cut in the cradle. What's up, only right that I do it. Colossal until I'm a boss, so they want me to fail. Look, we prevail. Jump on your tail. Know that they talking, they telling them tales. Just know how to tell. That's for the sale. I'm moving with caution, I'm saucing my nigga is nothing. From nothing to something they'll never be. Tycooning, I'm Dre with the thizzle face. I'm nothing my section has ever seen. Run the ice so I'm clutch, I don't need a screen. I'm Curry, I push it from 30 deep. Do the pin in the pad like a surgery. She the curve at you just to flirt with me. Toolie tucked up, but the jewels out. I just in a home with a full mouth. I'm a rare breed when the moon out. I'ma stop playing by the rules now. I've been ran plays, need a new route. Queen says she needs space.
Howdy, SMITE fans, it's J-Mac here. You're casual in ranked games, got you down, and looking for something a little more competitive? Well, we got just the thing for you. Check out our community esports, which hosts a plethora of events where you can play not just with your friends, but even sometimes against them. We've got just about every type of community esport that you can imagine. Long-form leagues mimicking the pro and amateur circuits, draft-style leagues if you want to spice things up and play with a whole bunch of different people, or if you're just in the mood for the occasional tournament, we've got plenty of those happening weekly, monthly, and sometimes even more often than those. If leagues are your thing, we got plenty to satiate that competitive appetite. Albion Giants, Quack and SMITE, and Glarious SMITE leagues are just a few of our mini orgs open to join. Give them a check and see what fits you best. If you've never seen a draft-style league, then you're in for a treat. The SMITE Draft League and Olympus SMITE League are just two of the largest draft leagues in the scene, and you should definitely give them a try, or at the very least, give them a watch to see what all the hype is about. If you can't commit to full leagues and just want to have some competitive fun, there's a plethora of weekly tournaments from orgs like Iced Esports, Vulpus Esports, and so many more. So, what are you waiting for? Head on over to SmiteAmateurLeague.com and check out everything that we have in store for you. There's a whole bunch of different checkboxes, whether you're playing on mouse and keyboard or controller, what region you are, what MMR division you are in your rank, to help you find the best suited league or tournament for you. So go out there today. We hope to see you on the battleground.
Yeah, that's right. Community esports, one of the hottest topics going around right now, and you should make sure that you jump into one of those community esports. If you want to do a league, a draft-style format, or just an occasional tournament, pop yourself over to SmiteAmateurLeague.com and see what there is to offer. I mean, if you just want an indication of how big they are right now, we just had the Salt League happen last couple of weeks. 200,000 gems were up on the line for those, and there's still plenty more of that to come, so make sure that you sign up for a community tournament or community league today. Again, go over to SmiteAmateurLeague.com just to see a few of what there is out to offer, because there are dozens of orgs out there hosting stuff all throughout the week, months, all year long. So make sure you go ahead and check those ones out. And also make sure you're sticking around here, because we're getting ready to jump into game number 2 here shortly after of this set. Because, Charlie, game number 1 just felt like this was all Oni Warriors from solo lane, getting an early kill for SOT on the chalk, and then just snowballing that across the map. Really felt like the Oni Warriors just had a stranglehold here in game 1.
Yeah, it seemed like they could do no wrong. I would say everywhere besides, I guess, duo lane. Jarcorrr was able to get a cheeky solo kill. But besides that, all Oni Warriors, right? They come out swinging, as you said, from solo lane. The chalk looked, I mean, unkillable. SOT had a field day, was just able to dive pretty much as far as he wanted. Only died, I believe, once when he went real far underneath the tier 2 tower, ends up getting feared back in by Quig. Besides that, unstoppable Pegon doing so much damage on that Thoth. Once again, very far in the backline when you have dive like this, when you have Panitom, who's just constantly going to the backline as well. It's hard for the Camelot Kings to think about who's supposed to get to the Thoth when you got to keep your team alive as well. Yeah,
I know that, there was moments in there where we kind of tune in. We're like, oh man, Genex doesn't have a recipe. Well, it turns out you don't need to cook your opponents out here. Genex on the Yemoja looked really strong. Game number 1, plenty of setup, plenty of sustain for his team as well. Just constantly keeping those heals up, giving the shielding to his team. And it just felt so difficult to really fight inside of that Yemoja ultimate, even despite when some of these big waves from Quig would come through with those spheres on the ultimates. It just felt like there wasn't enough defense to really deal with what the Oni Warriors had constantly running down. I mean, moments like these, decides, okay, I'm just going to run to the backline, ult, and oh, by the way, I have a fully upgraded Pridwin, Reverend Pridwin, and now here's about a 40% of my health as a shield that you had to burn through that, and then still everything left over.
Yeah, it did not look like a fun time to be any of the Camelot Kings really in this situation because of what you said. I think that it was a very well-drafted team comp as well, because they had equal parts dive, peel, setup, and then just range damage. And this was the most disgusting part of the whole matchup, honestly. Saw it, had no chance ever killing BMT.
No.
But what he did do was tank up the Titan. This is him getting hit by the Titan, by the way. That was 3 well shots.
You know what I'm saying? They did more than the Titan did.
Yeah, and he just zones BMT the whole time. Make sure that Discordia is not even a factor in that fight, as the Titan was supposedly dying. The rest of the team eventually did show up and end up, you know, actually pushing the Titan down. But, and that's the thing. Are you in a position where you ban Chalk away? I don't think so. I don't think that was the issue. I think it was how Sot played on the Chalk. CaptainTwig on the Bastet, you know, was okay. Didn't do enough for me personally. I think maybe needs a little bit more dive, needs a little bit more damage. So we'll have to see exactly what the Camelot Kings want to do to change things up. We talked about Variety needing safety on the Wukong, which he had. But maybe it's a little bit more damage, a little bit more dive. There's a lot that could change up here for the Camelot Kings.
Yeah, it's always kind of that, you know, feels bad style moments. Like, you want to ban the Chalk. The Chalk was really good up against you, but, like, do you really want to use a ban against a Chalk, even despite how well it did? Cases like this, probably not. I think you're right to say that. It was everything around the Chalk that kind of enabled SOT to really be able to play the style of play that he did. And it really did feel like we kind of got that traditional, now Oni Warrior style of play that we've been seeing all year, even with the change up to their supports. We'll have to see what changes in picks and bans get made as we get ready to jump into the P's and B's for game number 2. Here between the Camelot Kings and the Oni Warriors. This time, Camelot Kings going to take that second pick for themselves. And maybe some change-ups in the draft could be potential for the Camelot Kings to maybe shift up the momentum. I believe it was a Sun Wukong first pick for the Camelot Kings last time, and then a Charon Apollo kind of rounded out their top 3. Kind of among those 3, Trelly, is there anything that kind of sticks out to you that maybe a change is necessary, or do you think that it just came down to things are falling apart across the map that kind of trickled through everything else?
I definitely don't mind the Charon. I think that range damage, peel, CC, engage, disengage, Charon really does do it all. I don't think he does anything like incredibly oppressively. It's not like it's the most broken pick in the world. In fact, I'm not sure if it's at a 0% win rate so far, but has not had the greatest showing so far in our SPL games as of today. But you know, that's not really that much of an issue for me. Also, the Apollo, I mean, there was a couple ults that Yark went in on that I was a little bit concerned about, thinking, you know, why would you ult in on that? But you got to think when you're losing by this much and your team's this far down, sometimes you have to make those risky plays. So I don't think I would hate the Apollo being run back either. The duo lane, as far as I'm concerned, wasn't the main issue. It was more so just the team comp as a whole really not getting to its strength. You know, like Disco, Bastet, Wukong. I don't think any of those picks themselves are an issue. It's just how are you stopping the aggression from the Pele? How are you diving the free casting of the Thoth? Those questions had to be answered and they weren't. So going into game number 2, you hope you don't even have to ask those questions, right? You want to say, all right, Oni Warriors are in first pick. The Yemoja has already been taken away, so that's something they don't want to go to once again. They've got Freya and Hebo that will also not be getting played. If my memory serves, the Raijin would need to be taken away here if the Camelot Kings are still afraid of that pick going through. If that's the case, what would the Oni Warriors grab in tow? I'll have to see if it's the Raijin that the Camelot Kings are most worried about here.
Raijin, Pele comes to mind. That's been probably one of the most consistent picks that we've seen over the course of today, and has definitely been one of the biggest topics of conversation for jungle, and I guess also mid flexibility from what we saw out of Paul in the mid lane prior.
Wow.
Thoth will be the ban, so respect to Pegon on this selection. Maybe too far on its range to try and deal with, but immediately as you called it,
The Panitom drums as it gets
it'll be a
locked in.
Raijin. Look, if you don't pick the drum, you're just being a dum-dum.
I've heard people say that, and I think Panitom would agree, because the second it got locked in, I saw him start drumming. Pegon is going to have an absolute field day. One of the issues that Raijin has, of course, has been the Thunder Crash, but that deploy time was changed a bit. It's a bit faster now, so harder to try to lock in place, harder to CC. Does not mean that Charon can't try and, you know, stop it from going through with the silence or with that ultimate fear, but it has to be exquisitely timed. Wukong and the Charon pretty much run back so far for the Camelot Kings. They have no issues with the tanks on their side. Maybe it's the jungle or the carries. That's going to be the big switch up there for the Camelot Kings. But with that, Netrioid wants to take the Artemis once again. Seems like that's not going to be too frightening. But will it be something like, oh wow, the Khepri? That is interesting. That is not that aggressive, but at the very least, you have overwhelming safety, right? The Khepri is a pick that we haven't seen in quite some time, but in his moment, when Khepri's at his best, he's top of the meta when he is in an actual stance where he can just say, hey, there's a lot of burst on the enemy team. I want to use this Scarab's Blessing, res a key target, bring them back into the fight, and then we just use our numbers advantage.
Will be an Agni final pick here in the top 3 for the Camelot Kings. A shift away from the Discordia for BMT. Instead, over towards another burst style of mage. One maybe equal or maybe also at the same time less and more range. Those bombs able to get you some nice and easy setup for the team.
I say more.
Yeah, well, I mean, Apple goes a very far distance, but
Yeah,
outside
but
of the Apple.
The Apple is, if you're hitting a max range Apple, either A, you got real lucky with the bounce, or B, someone wasn't paying attention.
Someone got unlucky with the bounce.
Yeah, the bomb stuns are very consistent, whereas Disco just yeeting an Apple down the lane is, you can't count on it too much. So I'm saying, really do appreciate the Agni, more confirmed CC. Bomb stuns are some of the best ways to actually start a fight underneath the Phoenix or really anywhere, and I love this changeup. Take away the Pele before it gets into Panitom's hands. That's a good look.
A lot of bans towards jungle and even some potential solo as well. Chuck and Thor both banned by the Camelot Kings. Oni Warriors will take away the Ratatoskr and the Lancelot. And that leaves open the Pele, as you mentioned earlier. Let's go for the Camelot Kings. One, to put it over some pressure potentially into CaptainTwig's hands, but also, as stated, to remove that one from Panitom, not give him an option to run that one back here in game number 2. An important game 2 for the Camelot Kings. If they go down this one, now they're on set point, would have to reverse sweep the Oni Warriors if they want to win out on this first matchup today. Remember, loser does go home in this tournament. You're out. If you lose out on this one, winner moves on to wait in the semifinals. So, for the Oni Warriors, who do you go to next? You got Raijin, you got Artemis, you have your backline carries, you got Khepri to sit alongside the two of them. Looking for jungle and solo. Any picks that maybe come to your mind, Charlie, to kind of help round out this composition?
This man's a Susano one trick, man. We know what he's going to pick. Told you.
Man.
I mean,
you just let that one rip.
We could pretend like it was going to be something else, but, they banned Thor. They made their choice. They said, is he playing Thor? Is he playing Susano? We'd rather face this Susano. They let it through. Throwing Odin into the mix, which can be absolutely disgusting. I actually really do enjoy the Odin in this meta, just because, we saw the way that Sot likes to play solo lane at the moment. He's done it a lot in ranked. Is that Thebes build where he's just sort of ignoring the wave for the time being. Sometimes lets his jungle come over and clear it. Once he gets online, once he gets tanky, those 2v2s are disgusting. If your support's not there, you still get the Thebes aura with your jungler. You take those 2v2s, try and catch out a Pele trapper in a cage. Do the same thing for Agni. Do the same thing for Set if his dash is down. Be good looks for the Oni Warriors, especially if they're able to keep Raijin alive. A great way to kill Raijin, though, set Pele.
Get a double dive for those two. But actually, I've got to point out here, Charlie, there's no hunter. It's on the side of the Camelot King. So are you taking Set to the duo lane, or are you moving Pele over that way? Which of those two would you rather be putting in the jungle in this case? Would it rather be the Pele for jungle for you?
I'm putting Set in the ADC role, yeah, for sure. I think that Pele just uses that movement so well. The buff 2 or 3 is best used at just traversing the map, farming efficiently, whereas Set has incredible poke. He is as safe as you can get in that lane, really. It's the longest lane in Smite, and Set can traverse it so easily using that Sandstorm. So, yeah, I would definitely choose to put Set in that lane rather than Pele. It is just going to be difficult. No range damage can be an issue. No range auto attack damage, I should say, when you go into actual siege and burning through tanks. But if your goal for the Camelot Kings is to deal with Artemis and deal with Raijin, they certainly have a comp for it. My only issue is that if Pele and Set use everything in their kit to try and kill Pegon, and it gets Scarab's Blessing, the fight's probably over.
Yeah, this Khepri has really been a thorn in a lot of players' sides. It's not often that we see Khepris pop up. Hasn't been really a meta pick for quite some time. But it feels like every time we do see a Khepri, it's drafted and it never really feels like there's anything there to really deal with, the Thanatoses, the Kuangs, Achilles, things you can get the execute, kind of negate that entirely. But with these full dive, commits onto one person, it feels like this is a composition that potentially Khepri could thrive and really fight up against. We had the Odin at least in the top 4 only the Sun Wukong could really get out of the cage at that time, has to use his ultimate. Now it's set, rounding out the roster as long as his dash is down, keeps him trapped in there. How valuable of a tool is this Odin, especially when we start coming down to sieges, having that cage on a short cool? I mean, how valuable is that for the Oni Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, the Odin kind of wrecks this comp. I'm not going to say it's just over GG. I don't think that's ever the case just by looking at a draft like this. There is still room for the dive comp that the Camelot Kings has to succeed. It's just very difficult to just... Because what you want to do with Set and Pele is you force out the Thunder Crash from Raijin and just go in. If you do that and you're landing yourself in a cage, you can't chase him through the cage. Now you're stuck. And also, the Taiko drums that you're trying to stop is just going to be, you know, thwarting towards you. You have so much from Susano that we haven't even discussed, not to mention the jungle fights that Tusky can just dominate. It's not going to be easy. The Oni Warriors have a pretty easy time.
We'll see if the Camelot King can fight back against the Warriors and tie this set up, or is it going to be the Oni Warriors taking the lead with 2-0? Let's jump right into Game 2.
Thanks so much, J-Mac and Trelly on the desk. It is going to be, again, Gore, Myth, and of course, Doug, providing the views for us. And Mifflin, man, I'm going to just jump into the same conversation they were having. My mind was on a different god here, but I think the Odin deserves to be at the highlight just because of what he has been able to bring, or at least in this kind of composition, and what he's playing against, what he's going to be able to bring that stops the Kings.
I'm sorry, I'm just so locked on genetics and his unwillingness to purchase a recipe.
There it is.
Oh, there it is. You gotta think, oh, he's smiling it up too. He knows. He knows what he did.
He saw the Hazer tweet.
Yeah, you gotta think Oxy was yelling at him too, like, hey man, it's just free stats. Here's the thing about how not purchasing it does nothing for you. You're an active detriment, and don't do it again. And so he does it. What was the question?
It was something about Odin. You know what? We can talk about genetics anyway, because I wanted to ask about the Khepri, mainly because if you go back to the Warriors of Phase 1, you know, and this is nothing against Jake, but he had a more limited god pool, it feels like, at least in terms of success rate that we saw.
Run it down gods or nothing.
Yes, and genetics has a much more wide expanse than that, which brings things like the Khepri into the equation. But I guess the question is, does the Khepri still mesh with the Warrior style of play, even that we just saw?
Yeah, I think so, because it allows you to get hyper-aggressive with absolute confidence. And I'm not even talking about like, oh yeah, I'll die to tower and Scarab's Blessing will reset me. It's, oh, I can go into the tower and I at least have Scarab's Blessing if I need it, right? It's just the knowledge that there is something that can bail you out of your hyper-aggressive mechanical plays that will allow you to play better. It's almost like having a Khepri on your team makes you less nervous, and when you're comfortable, you play well.
Unfortunately, you need to have him around. Yeah, too comfortable, too early. He's not level 5 yet, and he's not even over here. Pegon takes a lot of poke in mid from Twig. And so that is going to be some of the risks. Raijin's been banned, I believe, every single game so far today until now, after some really nice changes that he's received. Panitom gets aggressive onto Tingz. Twig gets aggressive onto Pegon. It seems like that's going to be the little bit of the trade. Poke the mid laners, clear the waves, see what you can do. Oh, with the Kings falling back a little bit.
Ooh, that's close.
Yeah, you have to be careful. Have to be cautious. A good dash from Tingz to make sure to stay both for right now. But this feels like insanely volatile for what we've seen. At this point, maybe we're talking about having some of the disengage online for the mid laners, so it feels a little bit better. But there is a lot going on there that between the Pele and the Susano, blink and you miss it, a kill might just happen.
Yeah, neither mid laner has access to any potions right now, so BigManTingz a bit worse for wear. Whenever that potion wears off, will be the last of his resustain, and up against a Raijin, you just kind of die to Thunderclap Raiju combo, and it happens incredibly fast. Got to play real cautiously towards the center of the map. BigManTingz forced back to base immediately, so Pegon will be able to shove in that wave. This is strange from genetics. Surrounded by 3, nearly stops the back, and nobody interested at all at interacting with him. Just not going to fall for his shenanigans. You're not going to waste my time, genetics, says the duo, and the Camelot Kings reset.
Yeah, Panitom instead turns attention over. What a good pull and what a quick first blood. 2 minutes in, Panitom with a simple gank over to Solo finds a kill on the Variety.
I mean, you broke down everything that happened there. I got nothing to add. That was Variety just a bit out of position, a bit too early on. Didn't have the 72 transformations, didn't have a chance, and so an easy rotation for Panitom and a great way to start off this match for Susano, who has elected for a much faster build. than CaptainTwig has on the other side. Seems to be Soul Eater in first slot for both Variety and Twig, meaning that you have to stack it up before you find the value of that item. It's overall a little bit less power. It's less CDR. So Panitom with First Blood Bounty on first back. He's going to be in a very good spot.
And Twig and Variety just now are looking for a potential invade. Unfortunately, they caught at the tail end as Panitom and SOT secured the blue buff. So nothing too crazy happening on right. Since then, although
This is nuts.
yeah, this maybe is a little crazy.
Are you
and they're
serious?
going even deeper. Twig is the target. There's the Taiko drums. The damage is there,
No
and Pegon
way.
survives. The onslaught now has to survive the disengage. Bomb a little too short. Flame wave, you have to imagine, is there.
back.
Does get the stun. Panitom is here, and Tings has no mana. Pull gets beads out, but the chase is on. The damage is there, and a
Yark.
double 3-0 right now for Panitom at the
He's
King's
got ult.
speed buff. Now with Jarcorrr,
Doesn't need
not
it.
going to have enough to lock him down, and Panitom gets to walk away with one of the most outrageous early plays we've gotten to see.
Pegon jumped over wall into a speed buff. I don't even think he saw him. I don't even think he knew he was there. He's like, Twig's probably there. Just, that is unbridled aggression. That is just disrespect. It's the lack of concern is just ridiculous. Pegon doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He knows that is a high-risk play. He nearly dies before Panitom can make his way into that fight, and he just knows that it's going to work out. And even if he does die, it's a speed buff steal and a kill on a Twig, so it would have been worthwhile regardless. I love it. The Oni Warriors play a different brand of Smite.
And we were saying something about genetics, like trying to pull these guys back. I don't think it's happening, man.
Dude, genetics, why would you even? Why pull them back?
Yeah, at that point.
Yeah, hey, you want to win the game on the other side of the map before I even rotate out a lane? Before I even finish my Thebes? That's cool, guys. Go ahead. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah, have fun with it, in fact. I would think the genetics, and this is something I think is going to showcase maybe as we watch the Warriors. We only got the one game and now 5 minutes under our belts, but taking the mechanical talent that we've talked about all year and adding into it the direction that genetics can give to a game. I mean, we saw the shot calling last time. It changes, I think, the pace of this game for the Warriors, and not in a way that's good for anybody else in the league. It is only good for the Warriors because they know, like you said, in those moments in Game 1 where it's just like, we can pressure this Pyromancer and see if they'll step up. If they step up, we'll fight them and win because we're better, and if they don't step up, we get a free Pyromancer, and it feels like those are the decisions.
Dude,
They're
what?
locking them in
Stop.
here. Pegon Thunder crashes in, and it's taking quite a bit of damage here. Goes into the Taiko drums. Throws some of that damage out towards Tings. Gets feared back by Quig. Has Panitom around.
Just doesn't.
Thunder crashes back up, and he
What?
gets over the wall, and somehow he has gone unpunished, mostly for his aggression.
It just doesn't make any sense, man. We used to make fun of CaptainTwig for doing that exact thing on this exact pick, but he would die for it, right? Like, he'd get his kill and die. Pegon's just doing it. He just does not care. He had no idea Quig was there. He just can't have. There was no reason to have known. And it didn't matter even with new knowledge. My man was presented new information and said, I don't care.
Panitom seems to be on the same mindset right now. Goes for the knockup. Doesn't matter. Pegon knocks him down. Twig cannot survive in the jungle. Is not allowed to farm. And at this point is not allowed to do too much. 27 stacks on the Soul Eater. Down a level. 0-2-1 versus 3-0-1 for Panitom. And the Warriors, it took them a little while last game to get here, but once again find themselves at a 4-1 lead, now 7 minutes in.
You know what it almost reminds me of, Gore? It's that like that meme of the chart, like bronze players just hit your abilities, plat players, no guys, it's about teamwork in macro, and world champions or undefeated, nearly undefeated teams in the SPL, just hit your abilities. Just do it. And the Oni Warriors have fully embodied that style. It is so large a departure from how everyone else has been playing.
Yeah.
It really is a treat to watch. There are answers, though, and a good team fight really can put a stop to this. We haven't seen a 3-on-3 engagement. There have not been true 2-on-2s. It's the Oni Warriors asking unorthodox questions. You studied for a quiz, and the questions are just completely different. But eventually SMITE will become SMITE.
Yeah.
Eventually there will be a grouping around a Gold Fury. You can guarantee that in any given SMITE game. Eventually someone's going to pull the Fire Giant. And in those situations, the Camelot Kings have historically proven that that is them at their best. When they are grouped as 5, playing as a unit, and these longer battles around neutral objectives. So it's the exact same style of play, even with slight roster swaps for both of these teams, that we talked about in Phase 1. Can the Camelot Kings withstand this Category 5 disaster that is the Oni Warriors and just buckle down and not have their house blown over in the first 15-20 minutes? And if yes, that's where win conditions will start to present themselves for the Camelot Kings. As of right now, they're keeping the gold pretty even though the fights don't look so great. Experience, though, that's tough.
Yeah, 2,400 experience, 1,300 gold, and the experience mostly in the jungle. Walls dropped in solo, Variety forcing the Somersault Cloud. Goes in, but doesn't quite find the damage onto Panitom. There's going to be the knock-up, lockdown, pull in, 1 auto, and Panitom puts a 4th on the board. An absolute clinic from the jungler right now. And it does not seem like the Kings have an answer for him.
Yeah, Variety, that early dunk there, it seemed to me like he really wanted to take the fight, was trying to connect the damage. Unfortunately for him, juked out by Panitom, of course. And Twig says, well, your ult didn't connect. I don't see any damage. I don't see any reason to go into the fight. Just watches on voyeuristically from the jungle as his solo laner just falls down. Twig, you can't be doing this. Does Sod have it? Ooh.
Oh. Just a little shy. But man, poor Twig. I mean, even getting knocked back to base there does not necessarily feel that great.
Twig's having a rough set, man. I mean, he's bottom of the net worth charts here, too. I mean, a lot of his farm has been denied. He's not soaked up anything in lane, so BigManTingz has actually kept on par with Pegon. But this sacrificial playstyle, this selfless playstyle from CaptainTwig has cost him severely. 2-level deficit, hasn't finished stacking the Soul Eater, bottom net worth. You don't really want your Pele in that position. I can completely understand making sacrifices for yourself to better the rest of the team, but Twig is a win condition on this team, especially on this pick.
Especially with the dynamic they have now. He's going aggressive onto Pegon. Pegon's low, and there, you have to imagine it would be enough, but no, the Khepri with the saving play, and that's why you lock it in. Genetics might get rooted down, might cause some trouble still. We've got 2 minutes for the beacon, but that ult, saving Pegon, keeping him alive, and thwarting the Kings all in one go. You just can't overcome that, I guess, without an execute, and unfortunately for them, they just don't have one here.
Yeah, you'd have to change the timing of your damage or wait out the Scarab's Blessing, but that close to the tower would have got him back into the tower at least. A pick on a Netrioid could go a long way. Is the damage there? Slow's good, skewer not enough, and he's just out, Gore. And the Camelot Kings have come so close now, 3-4 times this game at finding something on the map. And then just a small interaction. One thing misses. Maybe you didn't get all 3 of your skewer procs there from the soldiers. Maybe Genetics is nearby and gives over additional defense or a revive. And maybe Pegon's able to just dash into your tower line and then walk out because he's Pegon. It's mentally crushing.
Yeah.
It is really a sickening feeling to be on the other end of this. And I've got maybe more experience than anybody else at losing in the SPL because it's all I did when I was there. And it really, the nature of which it is happening right now to the Camelot Kings, it is just, I just got to imagine, so difficult to recenter yourself.
Speaking of recentering, Variety right now is locked around behind the tier 1 of the Warriors in solo. And Panitom saw it, put about 2/3 of his health bar down, force him into the Somersault Cloud in the Fire Giant pit.
That's
finally
big.
A dive that goes well, and it goes well for Twig as he jumps onto the mid-tier 1 and picks up a kill onto Pegon. Variety even makes it out alive with the bird form. And Mifflin, sometimes it's small, but that's a pretty big win for the Kings. In fact, when you were talking about the gold earlier, experience is still 2,200, but now you're sub 1,000 separating the two teams in terms of gold.
Yeah, they're doing a very good job farming up, and if they can grab the Stygian Beacon as well, these small wins, these death of 1,000 cuts have been the Camelot Kings' MO for as long as they've been under the Camelot Kings banner. So, able to right the ship a bit there. I love the call to dive the tower, realizing that so many members of the Oni Warriors are on the right-hand side of the map. Might as well make something happen in the mid. Genetics didn't quite have that Scarab's Blessing back up yet either, so knowing that that cooldown wasn't available, even if Genetics shows up, really not a whole lot he could have done to have prevented that. Maybe a shell, maybe a little bit of defense, but not quite enough to guarantee the survival of Pegon. So Camelot Kings, they find their opportunity to strike back, and that's a big one. This is a composition, this dive composition from the Kings, that really can't afford to play into a deficit like we had seen in Game 1.
And something that so far, at least experience-wise, the deficit still exists there, but otherwise they've been able to maintain a lot of it. And a lot of that experience we've seen has been in the jungle. Pretty massive kill for Twig to pick up. Not a massive bounty necessarily on Pegon, just finally punish him for something. It feels like is the big deal there. The Warriors not slowing down too much in terms of everything else. In fact, Genetics is maybe enabling Pegon. And you had mentioned this earlier, but you could play more confidently, maybe a little less fear, which I don't know if the Warriors know the word at this point, the way Pegon's been getting aggressive. But finally, because of the lack of invades, you've gotten a little more farm for Twig online, and you've allowed the team overall to kind of right the ship, as you had said.
Yeah, surprised that Variety is keeping as close to SOT as he has been as well, considering the pace of his lane. The Camelot Kings has always been their magic trick, is finding farm where no other teams can. Starting to reflect a bit now, as they've put themselves in the driver's seat so far as gold is concerned. Experience advantage, I believe, still does belong to the Oni Warriors. One level here or there for individual members. But maybe this is where Genetics can start to come into play. Has been, for the most part, hovering that mid to duo side of the map. Maybe now the Oni Warriors, if they can get SOT out of lane, group up around that Gold Fury, try and force a fight there. Let's try and leverage that experience lead while it still matters.
Watching Genetics carefully, it feels like, one, he's perpetually been over like near the beacon, despite the beacon not actually being up anymore. And so positioning for some sort of engage, see if he can go in and grab somebody, set up potentially a kill. Maybe he will be able to find it. Looks like the lockdown plan was Variety. About 4 Warriors were zoning in on him, but the bird form from the Sun Wukong creates enough space, gets him out of there. We are once again going towards the same, or at least similar build for Netrioid in terms of itemization. Whereas Jarcorrr is going for what we were seeing from Cyclone Spin on the Artemis. Admittedly, he's on the set, but do you like the early Transcendence, the Jotuns, stuff to get in, I guess, to the back line as best you can if you're Jarcorrr here?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a standard. I would like to make contact with you once and preferably have you die off that singular contact. That's the nature of Jarcorr's build. Just tons of power, wants that skewer to do as much as possible, or even just use it as a poke tool. A little bit later on, you can't really itemize too much towards auto attack here, because come late game, you're not going to win that boxing match. Unfortunate for Netrioid, thought Jarcorrr would fully commit to the tower. And so Caledonian Boar off the board might leave him in a position now that CaptainTwig could make a rotation over towards that duo lane. Again, you have to get through Genetics first, and Genetics been hovering in the jungle so much, you got to think he's just ready for either a commitment on the mid or the duo. Playing spoiler essentially to the entire center to left side of the map. So long as Scarab's Blessing is available, it really is difficult for junglers to find these opportunities. You'd love that to go down first, but haven't quite been given over too many fights. The Oni Warriors, that is, at least not in the lane. Pegon has. Netrioid's been playing a much slower game.
Well, a nice quick shift in pace. Last game it was slow, and then suddenly the floodgates opened, and the Warriors were unrelenting. This time around, the Warriors opened up unrelenting, but the Kings forced them to slow things down, put up a couple speed bumps in the road, and not only that, they actually pulled about 1,000 gold, a little over, in their favor, with no massive objectives taken. And like you said, even without Genetics, this was something that the Kings are known for, is finding farm wherever they can. Unfortunately for Tingz, he's locked up in the walls. They fall down, though. And even with the jump forward, the damage, the tail end of the shot from Pegon connects, and Sot cleans up the rest. They take out the mid laner. Now you've got Panitom here. It doesn't seem like the team wants to commit to more, because why would you when you can just go ahead, start up the Pyromancer on one side. It looks like the Kings are going to try to answer back with the Beacon. Variety standing near one to try and steal that away. Warriors secure the Pyromancer. Meanwhile, Sot is at least bullying around the Beacon. Unfortunately for him, it's a 2v1, which means it is still being capped for the Kings. Now, the rest of the team shows up, and Sot bought enough time to get them over here. 3-man cap. And they're going to pick this one up pretty easily. The Kings have to let it fall to the wayside.
And so now Stygian Beacons traded 1-1. This time, though, Pyromancer over towards the Oni Warriors and SOT, proving that this Gauntlet of Thieves build is real and makes you unkillable. Odin as well, very difficult to deal with. Maybe if BigManTingz survives that fight, 6th round, has Rainfire, could keep SOT at least a bit more honest on his positioning, but considering he had already fallen, SOT, there's really no threat to him. I mean, did you see what Jinku Bang just did? He'll HP 5 it back pretty quickly. The Oni Warriors playing well around their solo laner, but haven't quite been able to get as many neutral objectives as Game 1. I think that is one of the primary difference makers, because they just haven't had too many opportunities. Yark!
Chase is there. The damage just is not. In fact, Twig turns some around, but no, here comes Tusky. And Netrioid to the rescue, puts the CC in to allow Panitom to pick up the kill. 5-0 and 1. 6 out of 7 affected kills here for the Warriors. And you have to imagine, if Panitom is on the map and he's near you, it might just turn into a fight in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, that pullback, the ultimate placement connects with both targets there, Jarcorrr and CaptainTwig. Typhoon, tons of value. That's what Charlie was talking about on the desk a little bit earlier, that inflection point of when Rainfire actually starts to stack up some of that damage, makes it a bit more difficult for that Raijin to get into his own effective range. The Oni Warriors, though, once more, can't move in towards the Gold Fury. They will settle with the Tier 1 tower on the left-hand side, which put Jarcorrr in a precarious situation. Do I want to push up? Do I want to play aggressively? Can I jump on a Netrioid? I still have the lead, but I have nowhere to run if Panitom shows up or if Genetics is nearby. And so he'll have to think a little bit more about whether or not he wants to get aggressive. But that Gold Fury stays strong. Neither team having their opportunities. Neither team exactly has confirmation on objective either. Disjointed ultimates from both of their mages means that it's a lot of damage. It just takes a while to channel all 3 bombs or all 4 hammer shots onto the drum there. Hasn't stopped the Kings, though, who pull it first.
Fury getting relatively low here. Bomb's going to drop, and that's all you need. Kings get the Gold Fury. Keep this game about as even as you can, 20 minutes in. 7-2 for the kills, like you said earlier. The fights don't seem to be going the Kings' way, but the gold is 300. That is negligible this late in the game. Tier 1 tower in mid, going to get pressured, knocked down. Walls dropped onto Quig, and the pull-in is good. The lockdown is just as strong. As they close up these fights, oh my god, the damage from the Warriors, and the chase down is even better. It's Sot, who is just holding W, does not stop, and will not stop. He is chasing Twig under the Titan, looking for the kill. Will not be able to find him, but Mifflin doesn't even matter. You don't get the one, you pick up all 4 of the others. The Kings virtually wiped off of the map. Panitom maybe in a little bit of trouble. Has to blink forward. Knock up from Twig. Not good enough. You have to play carefully here. You're in a 1v5 situation. It is 21 minutes in. This Phoenix in mid is gone. And the Fire Giant open if the Warriors so please.
Just about any other team that makes that play, I'm thinking, why are you fighting? The objective already went down. There's no reason to fight now. What are you going to do? And the only way to say, oh, we'll do it all. We'll just do it all. We'll get rid of everything. We'll take the team fight and the Tier 1 mid tower and the Tier 2 and the Phoenix, and it's all off this one 30-second exchange, and it's SOT once more, who just, it's so simple, right? He's tanky, okay. He walks forward, finds the cage onto just one. It's Quig. Knows this team has the damage. They get him shut down. Pegon lines up one of the highest value Taiko drums I've ever seen. Connects all of his shots not only onto Quig, but BigManTingz dies in the background. I don't even think he realized he was under the ire of Pegon. Takes so much damage before the Aegis is even channeled, and then is immediately dealt with afterward. And from there, the Camelot Kings crumble. They lost their support, so they can't create space, and they lost their best damage dealer as well, so they can't fight back, and the Oni Warriors run them down.
And I think this says just as much about it as you could imagine. 2 of the Warriors, Genetics and Netrioid, started to pull the Pyromancer just in the face of the Kings. They did leash it. Create a little bit of space for them. Force the Kings to fall back. Although, if Sot has anything to say about it. Everybody else seems to be on the same page. Variety and the solo lane is the target. Meanwhile, Sot is just juggling three in mid on his own, the same way he was on Shock. BigManTingz is brought to half health by the solo laner, and guess what he does? He jumps in. He buys time. His team is on the way. You've got Khepri in case you need the res. That one doesn't come true. Now Pegon, a little bit of trouble getting poked out. Here's going to be the river. Now goes into his ult, pulled over towards the jump in. Should be good. What a CC chain from Panitom to make sure Variety has to play it safe. Forcing the somersault cloud and then forced to fall back. Now Sot is back to his shenanigans, jumps in, kills off Tingz, who had the audacity to try and escape him earlier. And it's going to be the one kill so far, but the chase still on for the Warriors. It is borderline bullying here. 13-2, 23 minutes in, and the Warriors finally have to pull back.
It's just gotta be build diff, right? Like, it's just gotta be that Prophetic Cloak, Gauntlet of Thieves is the best thing you could do out of the solo lane, because what I just saw from SOT just can't continue to happen.
No.
He's tanking 3 people, he's eating ultimates, he's eating cooldowns. It's not like they're just trying to ignore him. They're just getting absolutely dominated by him. CaptainTwig doing it by Panitom this time around. Might be able to make a little bit of space, but I doubt he gets too much further than this. Dash forward. Makes it look simple. Couldn't even quite get that ultimate off. Panitom catches him, pieces him up in the jungle. There needs to be an answer to SOT. And the answer that I could devise, the only one I can really conceive of right now is you gotta strip his defense. Where do you get that? Sunder. Maybe you can get rid of that HP shield, immediately jump on him. I don't see any Sunder pickups from the Camelot Kings, so that's not an easy answer. Maybe you want to grab some like anti-shield items, but like even then, is it really just the shielding that's keeping him alive? No. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it is just how tanky he really is, and he's doing just enough damage that you can't ignore him because the lead and the bluestone finished up. It's an awkward situation. SOT is crazy, and that is the analytical answer. you ask anyone at Harvard right now what's going on with SOT, and they'll tell you he's crazy.
That's crazy. You know what? We've got him on the line, too, and every single one of them did come back. There's an anonymous poll. He also just finished his Prid win, which is just going to make it even harder. Jarcorrr is in an unfortunate spot, maybe fortunate spot, no, but the Khepri again is causing trouble. Variety goes for the knockups to try and keep him going. The damage was there. Pegon forced to fall back. Netrioid finally goes down, and a kill for the Kings. It finally opens things up. Sot has Tingz alone, isolated inside a cage. Fire Giant's kind of helping out here, but who is he helping to? 3 now gone, and it's a triple kill for Jarcorrr, picking up the slack where it has been, looking for a 4th, but Panitom stops him just shy. Between him and Sot, they've managed to pull back just as many kills as the Kings picked up. If Sot has his way, Quig's not making it back to base either, at least not in one piece. Jumping, even daring to run under the tier 2, but you have to think, with that dash, the Charon is out of here.
I think if it's anything besides Khepri for the Oni Warriors, that is the cleanest win the Camelot Kings could have ever asked for. But because they are forced to kill Pegon twice, eats up so much of that time, SOT has no one peeling back to try and help BigManTingz, so he just deals with him, rotates back through, cleans up the kill on the CaptainTwig, and then Panitom wins the 1v1. Why would you ever 1v1 Panitom? I couldn't tell you. And I'm sure we'll have to ask Jarcorrr a little bit later on. Crazy stuff. But the Camelot Kings show fight back. The Oni Warriors in a split engagement where SOT has completely isolated the primary damage dealer of the Camelot Kings, BigManTingz, was still able, the Camelot Kings that is, to fight back. A significant mental win for them, showing that they can prevent a Fire Giant from going down. They don't need to just roll over and play under their Titan or under their Phoenix. So I think massive for the Camelot Kings. Massive from Jarcorrr, too, showing that this set is not just for show. He's got a whole lot of damage behind him. Just needs someone to get rid of that Scare's Blessing first.
And once it was, honestly, he was even part of making sure it got used in the first place. And so it could have been a 4-piece for him. But as of now, shows that, like you mentioned, he's a threat. He also got a Phantom Shell online for Quig, so Sot maybe becoming slightly less of a deterrent. Well, if you just watch him, he just does not seem to have any qualms. Is he still just hanging out over here? I don't even think he's looking for the fight anymore. I think he's just kind of vibing with them.
I can't believe every time we go to like Sot's player cam and he's doing something like this, how locked in he is. Just
Yeah,
like
no smiles.
He's butt bouncing in enemy jungle.
But look
he's not. But look at him. That's peak performance. He's like, yep. I'm e-athleting right now. Like I am 100% an electronic athlete, and he's right. He just zoned the entire team. He's a walking ward. Clean stuff.
Gets the job done. Fire Giant on 5 for the Warriors. They've got 12 more kills than the Kings right now. And so Mifflin, we're starting to hit 28. You've got Tier 2 tower in left and in right for the Kings, though one of those is about to change. Tier 2 on right goes down. Mid Phoenix yet to respawn. How's the defense looking here for the Kings?
I like this composition on defense more than the previous. Agni's really good at poking from range. Does not have a Divine Ruin, so anti-heal not exactly there. You're going to get the full value of lifesteal or the resustain from Fire Giant. But just keeping these squishier targets at bay, having a range stun, of course, going to be very valuable. Quig essentially locks down an entire lane if he survives, but the fight's split. SOT's already in the back.
Yeah, and already putting pressure onto Twig gets him to about 2/3 of his health bar.
This is ridiculous.
Has just been bouncing around for as long as he can. And the thing is he's 6-0-4. You can't even fault him for it with how deep he's playing now.
Didn't they get rid of Jake for this?
And 8-0-7 for Panitom. You know where the kills are going to be coming from. There's going to be the cage. Dropped wave. Good from Quig. And it's going to create some distress in the backline. Need a Scarab's Blessing, and you need it soon onto Panitom, but he doesn't even need it for the revival. Instead, he stays alive just long enough to help get a kill. Unfortunately, it's a massive shutdown. Variety finds the kill, but it does not seem to matter, because where has Sot been? He's been in the back, zoning out the rest. It is 4 gone on the Kings. Just Panitom in return. Mid Phoenix will go down, and unless Quig can pull a miracle out of the sticks, it's going to be game 2 over to the Warriors.
What's the conversation right when BigManTingz is being accosted by SOT in his fountain? Guys, please, someone get him off me. Help.
I'm getting glizzy.
I'm getting absolutely owned by a hot dog who's butt bouncing on me. Who's going to do anything about it, bro? Who's going to peel back and stop that guy? I didn't see anyone deal damage to him. I didn't see anything that could have possibly prevented it. I think the best answer is BigManTingz, you're doing God's work. Thanks for keeping him out of the team fight. He'd be doing it to us if not you. Unfortunately, the rest of the team were also doing it to him, though.
There was a point, I mean, you had even called it around the Fire Giant, where he's bouncing around. He was fighting 3, stone-faced. Forces 1 to go back. The other 2 have to retreat because they can't do anything to him. And then he just walks around in the jungle. I'm sorry, butt bounces around in the jungle. And there was no answer. There was nothing to stop it. And if it wasn't the Odin, he would have done it on the chalk again. And so it feels like, I mean,
Get rid of them both?
Build is it God's?
It's gotta be the build. It's gotta be the build, right?
Yeah, it's gotta be the build. Unfortunately, you can't ban those. We'll see if the Odin, though, tacks up a ban column there, or what exactly the Kings need to do, because it's do or die going into Game 3, and we'll see what they can do right after this break.
For the code switching, been hitting my soul, been on the ropes, I'm ready to grow, so get to know me. Keep your head up, I want you to grow with me. See this gold on me, want you to glow with me. Yeah, alright, okay, we get it. No contest. Wait, see this gold on me, search up, nigga. You to glow with me. The world been dying, days is numbered, check the climate, I'm sick of it. They had brain scheme to get the riches quick. I played a long game with serene scene and I whip this quick. From the back room to the hearts, I'm in the thick of it. I grind too hard for y'all not to see me a star, bitch. I'm raising a bar like they really pay me to talk. My life been in shambles, but I got handles. I'm finishing at the rim. I remind you time and again that I'm really him. Oh, you ain't up? This not just for the show, but bet you entertain. Anybody not for me is below me. Blow me, you in the way. I live my dreams, I got it locked, the master keeping on me. Back in the field, running audibles with the team. Everything I got out the mother, told my truth. I shake that fake shit, they praise you, then minimize you behind you. Just know I notice you. Stay woke, no joke, it really be the ones you closest to. Had to stop sleeping on myself like I ain't know the truth. Oh, this to me like it's really nobody code is this. And if you disagree, then you jaws and your claim get audited. Who you know do the beating and talking and write the harmonies. I'm really convinced there's nobody out here going hard as me. Wish well the dog that claimed belief in me so he could use me. Look at me now, you chose your route, I know you sick to see it. You talk a lot, all that flop, but that's not harming us. Capping your status, we back, ain't nobody bras us. To the ones that held me down for the count, look at what growth will do. I'm the kid from the cul-de-sac, feeling double sex with loot they pay to play my shit back. Ain't no way I'm going back until I'm fossil fuel to the flame, just like I'm supposed to do. Enough of the code switching, been hitting my soul, been on the ropes, I'm ready to grow, so get to know me. Keep your head up, I want you to grow with me. See this gold on me, want you to glow with me. Been hitting my soul, been on the ropes, I'm ready to grow, so get to know me. Keep your head up, I want you to grow with me. See this gold on me, want you to glow with me. I've been on a job, trying to take it far. I need that ROI, gotta pay the cost. I'm all in on me, little baby, she agrees, she really been here through the fall. She the only thing I need. I wanna be free, I know that they want me for my ideas so they can line their pockets. Don't hit me to tell me that you give a fuck about me. You don't even know nothing about me, trying to force me on your timeline. You know you need to stop it, I live for more than attention. Might not be your trending topic, put my worth in analytics. I admit that took a toll, I got addicted to scrolling. We know well that get toxic, I got caught comparing me to people I don't even know. They say it's lonely at the top, well maybe then I'll focus on things that's more important and let whoever think whatever and just keep it moving. These niggas won't work on themselves, they'd rather see you losing. You'll never see me losing. Enough of the code switching, been hitting my soul, been on the ropes, I'm ready to grow, so get to know me. Keep your head up, I want you to grow with me. See this gold on me. Want you to grow with me. Want you to grow with me.
Well, welcome back. Game number 2 between the Warriors and the Camelot Kings. Showed a little bit of more signs of life here from the Camelot Kings, but the Oni Warriors still able to run through this one. Charlie, this just feels like another game where SOT takes an unconventional style pick into the soul lane, something that's not very common, something that's not very meta, and just looks like the most unkillable man on the planet. I mean, this guy is running around, just jumping in the middle of 2-3 people multiple times around objectives, and it just feels like there's nothing the Camelot Kings can do to not only deal with this Odin, but as you mentioned, maybe some of the struggle, close out these kills with this Khepri standing by.
Well, I think that was the main issue, right? Because if you think about it, the way the composition was built was to kill Pegon. They've got Pele, they've got Set, they were going to double dive. It did happen. Pegon died. Showed the weakness of Raijin. Yeah, he's got crazy cooldown. Yeah, he's got crazy damage. He's just a sitting duck if you can chase that dash, which happened a few times, I believe 3. The issue, however, is you're taking the tank-killing guy, and that's Jarcorrr, and making him from the tank-killing guy to the mage-killing guy. And if you got 2 mage-killing guys, then you don't got the tank-killing guy anymore, and that means that SOT gets to have an absolute field day. I'm not going to say that SOT wouldn't have done this on any other matchup, because we've seen time and time again he does, but he was getting ignored because, as we know, your ADC is going to be the one to shred these tanky targets, and more often than not, Jarcorrr is nowhere to be found in these fights. It's Tingz alone with SOT. That was what would happen, and unfortunately for Tingz, he never, ever wins that trade.
Yeah, I just watched Twig fire at least 3 of his Conolados into SOT, and I think he maybe broke the shield at that point. I mean, just felt like SOT just got to run this show. I mean, this is the moment where I knew it started to get absurd, as SOT gets a kill under tier 2 and decides, you know what? I still got 3/4 of my health. I'm going to go ahead and dive the Phoenix. I'm not going to get this kill, but I'm still going to do it anyways, because who on this Camelot Kings team is going to stop him? Oh, and by the way, he did get another kill. Wasn't on his ideal target, or the one he was looking for, but still was after. Also, this is the moment that you know it's getting a little silly, as he is just constantly special emoting across the board here.
4k HP with the shield.
Yeah, that's gross.
And, who's shredding through that? Like, no one. And that's the thing about that build. Yes, if you kill Pegon for free without genetics rezzing, and then it's a 5v4, you can probably just brute force the Odin. You can overwhelm him, but it just was not happening. Genetics was stalling out plenty, and SOT goes completely overlooked, because what are you going to do? You can use Kingslayer on the Odin with 4k HP. Even that isn't enough to try and shred through him. So it just seemed like from the start, if your whole plan was to try and counter that Raijin, just ban it away. Just play. If you ban it away, I think the Camelot Kings draft just opens up so many more doors.
Yeah, and I think Pegon puts on a wonderful display of kind of how every player thinks that they sometimes feel whenever they're playing a game. Just his level of confidence, too. I'm level, 4 or 5. Jungler's probably at his speed buff. I'm going to jump over this wall, and I'm going to fight him at his speed buff. And, okay, well, yeah, maybe, Panitom might show up and help me. But, for the fact that Pegon was able to just so confidently walk up to the enemy's speed buff in enemy territory by himself and say, I'm going to take this 1v1, sink or swim, and then he has that trust for Panitom to jump in afterwards. Nearly styles. I will say, if he would have survived the rotation from BMT after, that might have been the flashiest play of the entire tournament. We're only in day number 1, and I would be willing to say that's probably still pretty good for the remainder of this tournament. But Pegon and the Warriors, they're just playing on a whole other level at this point.
And that has been the case. I would expect that to continue. The Camelot Kings have one more shot to try and turn this thing around momentum-wise, and I think they got to come out of the gate swinging. No more just going for these sort of sit back and wait style of plays. The dive comp, I don't think it's been working that much either. They need to really pick a lane and probably try to play through it. And dealing with SOT is one thing. I don't think you really have to camp him, but getting variety at least to remain with parity, so he can also do what your carries, what SOT is doing to the enemy team, could be a good place to start. So I'm thinking, I don't know if it's something along the lines of the Wukong or something, but changing up something for variety to give him that ability to dive.
Yeah, it really just feels like game number 1, Variety went down pretty early in that game. Game number 2, Variety never really got to get online for himself. So maybe a change up here for the Camelot Kings. We move into the picks and bans for game number 3 between the Kings and the Oni Warriors. Warriors, 1 game away from sweeping out this set. Camelot Kings have to reverse sweep if they want to win this one out and move themselves to the semifinals. But they've got to make a big change up here to slow down this pacing of momentum that the Warriors have built up for themselves. As the first few bans start to roll through, Artemis a good start to try and take away some of that momentum from Netrioid, but feels like it's momentum in every single lane that the Camelot Kings have to work against. So all-run Artemis for the Kings. Warriors, they take away Chernobog and Hebo.
Certainly do. These next two are going to be very telling, though. The Yemoja has been pretty highly contested. That Raijin we've been talking about still could be an issue, and the Camelot Kings have not liked Pegon on the Thoth. So that's their choice. They have first pick, remember, so the Camelot Kings have a bit of freedom here. The Oni Warriors may have to consider if it's something like the Yemoja they don't want to deal with, the Raijin could be an issue, or leave them both open and just get their pick of the two. For my money, I would say Pegon doesn't want to play the Raijin again. I don't think he had fun that game. I don't think that the dash is ever enjoyable into the amount of CC and dive they had. And you can't count on that res from genetics every time, so I would assume that's not something the Oni Warriors want to immediately snap lock, but Tingz might have a bit of fun. So it looks like that will be the call. Remove it. We don't want to give it away, and we're not going to play it. The Oni Warriors ban it, and to me, Yemoja seems like a pretty easy call if the Camelot Kings want to go for that. Quig has had some success on the Charon, but Charon himself has not had much success win rate-wise. I believe 0-4. Yeah, switch it up. Let Charon go through. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think this is a solid pick for Quig, mostly because you look back at his competitive history. It's his most played god by like 4 times almost, compared to his next one. 42 games of Yemoja and nearly a 79% win rate on this god. Yeah, if Yemoja is good, or even remotely good, I think this is a strong pick here for Quig. To kind of get the rookie player something he's comfortable with, something that, yes, you'll still need your team communication, but something that you can help continue pushing a game for yourself and for your team. Oni Warriors, their response to Yemoja is 2 gods to try and get away from Yemoja. Anhur and Merlin both drafted up.
Wait, go back to... Look at Oxy's notebook.
Oh, yeah. Wait, hold on. What did I miss here?
What, do you see raw?
Yeah.
That's not raw. What? That's just...
Clearly it is raw. You identified it pretty quickly.
I can see the word raw next to the drawing.
That's his staff.
That's a hammer. That is not raw.
That's his staff.
That looks like George Washington holding a hammer. I refuse to believe anything else.
Do we have a way of getting like a raw card art anywhere that we can just kind of like see? You know, I'm going to look this up. We won't be able to provide it on Brian. I'm going to look this up. Raw SMITE card art. I'm Googling this right now.
I can assure you that looks nothing like raw.
Okay, no, he doesn't have the eye of raw on top. That looks more like a walking cane now that I look at it.
Good. Moving on. The Lancelot finally does make it through. Has been banned away pretty much every game so far. On top of, once again, the Wukong. Despite the fact that it wasn't my favorite, again, it's not like it's bringing negative energy. It's just not enough, right? I think the dive does need to be doing a little bit more. And unfortunately for the Camelot Kings, once again, the Khepri comes through for the Oni Warriors. And that is going to be a scary thought. Trying to get to this Merlin already difficult. Trying to get to this Merlin with the Khepri around, almost impossible.
Anhur, Merlin, Khepri, top 3 for the Warriors. Lancelot, Wukong, Yemoja for the Camelot Kings. We'll see if maybe Riding can have some better luck on the Sun Wukong this time through. It hasn't been the strongest yet in our first couple of sets, or first couple of games, I should say, of this set. Lancelot making his appearance. We'll have to see how CaptainTwig can perform on this god. Lancelot's one that's bounced around a little bit as far as where he lands in a lane, maybe his competitive strength as well. So we'll see how CaptainTwig can do with that. Next wave of bans, Agni and Freya by the Oni Warriors. Camelot Kings take away Thor and Odin. Doesn't feel great when you have to ban away an Odin, but maybe given the composition the Kings have already drafted, it seems like that's a viable and maybe a strong ban to take away from SOT, especially even given that he's already had 1 game of warm-up on it.
I did see Tingz just breathe a sigh of relief when that Odin got banned. Oh, all right. At least I don't have to deal with that. We'll see
Not
what
again. The flashbacks.
We'll see what else SOT is cooking up. The next couple of picks come through, but also we talked about Panitom going towards the Susano because it was banned away, or wasn't banned away last game. This time, once again, it's the Thor over that Susano. Panitom could run it back or just look to play something else entirely that is still available. towards the Oni Warriors. They have to figure out what it is they prioritize more. Does Sot want to sit back and see the rest of the draft before he grabs his god? Or will Panitom do the same? With that being said, though, we already have the Thoth taken away, the Agni, the Raijin, the Hebo. Mid laners looking a bit thin here for Tings. It's not like he couldn't go towards a Hunter, but does he really want to go back to the Discordia after the earlier performances? The question, that is still a pick that he has liked, but I don't know if he was enjoying it so much in game number 1.
I'm kind of wondering what the state of mid lane is for some of the mages right now. 'Cause, Merlin's always kind of just that staple. It's like Merlin's not really a meta pick, but he's always just a good pick. Raijin's kind of the hot topic at the moment. Agni kind of bouncing back and forth. Discordia has always kind of been up there. So what's the next go-to here for the mages? Or do we maybe see something similar to what we saw from the Guild of Gladiators run? Maybe a double Hunter style of composition. But Olaron, Freya both gone. Maybe unlikely to see a magical ADC. So instead, we'll see Tiamat, who also kind of sits there similar to Merlin, but maybe kind of less often nowadays, Charlie, where it was for a while there was a whole Tiamat meta. Now it feels like she's kind of just there's nothing else I really want to go towards, so maybe a Tiamat. So how do you kind of feel about Tiamat with what the Kings have drafted with it?
I mean, definitely the safest pick that Tings has had all set, and I think that's probably a priority at this point, because you don't know if that Kuang's going solo, if there's going to be another tanky beast being locked in next, so you got to try and just play for all your options. Tiamat still has incredible late game, safety, decent early pressure. A pick that I'm never going to hate, to be honest with you, as long as you're able to have a little bit of self-peel and clear the wave, and then have that late game damage, should be just fine. Hachiman as well fits that bill pretty well. Late game shred, safe early clear, until he's safe in lane. A set hover, which unfortunately doesn't answer too many of my questions, because I think Set and Kuang both have the same ability to go in solo lane or in jungle, depending on just who wants to play what at this point. If we're seeing the switch up to a Fenrir, that tells me that Sot might be taking the Kuang, and this is just Panitom's pick being hovered, and now that we see the Susano, it almost confirms it.
Susano for the Warriors. There was a moment, if we saw the second locked in, that I would have raised the potential question of Merlin solo, only because we've seen SOT do it before.
We have.
I don't think he won that game, if I remember correctly, either.
I don't think he did.
I'd have to kind of dig a little bit deeper in there as far as his god and kind of play count with that, but probably don't have to worry about that at all. Oh no, he's played it twice actually, and both of them are losses. So once this year and once who knows when the last time. We don't have to worry about that though. Kuang solo, most likely the round out here for the Oni Warriors. And Susano going back to Panitom. It's a very squishy composition that the Warriors have drafted, a very dive-heavy style of comp. When I look at Anhur plus almost any support, really, feels like this is one that wants to get involved early. So for the Warriors, is this a comp that just keeps getting better as the game goes on? Is this one you're fine scaling a little bit later, or is this a composition that you would want to start kind of running it down a little bit earlier?
You would definitely prefer to win this one earlier for the Oni Warriors, just because you're going to prefer to have a traditional tank later on, and Anhur is fine, but is going to get outscaled a bit by the Hachiman just by being able to crit you from across the map and just shred through with the extra attack speed, that sort of thing. But I think the hybrid Kuang, it depends on how you want to build Kuang as well. Full damage Kuang struggles early, hard carries late. The hybrid Kuang is okay early, then really comes online when he's able to just live through all these ganks and then still solo carries later on, which is kind of how Sot likes to play. So I would assume this is more of a hybrid build Kuang solo, and then Panitom can go over and play through it. I don't think that it's end of the world if it gets late game, but the Oni Warriors definitely would prefer to get a lead and hold on to it.
So for the Camelot Kings, what's kind of their win back? Is this a comp for the Camelot Kings that wants to get to the late game just because of the nature of how Tiamat functions? Yemoja just keeps getting better as the game goes. Or is this also one that the Camelot Kings maybe need to try and get some pressure, have CaptainTwig make some early rotations? What's kind of that strong point for the Camelot Kings?
I would say because it's game 2 of, 5, but a potential 3, the Camelot Kings need to get active early. This is nothing to do with the composition. This has everything to do with changing the momentum of this set. Because if you go down early, You've been going down early for the past 2 games now. You've been dealing with unkillable solo laners and SOT. You've been dealing with plenty of dive, pretty phenomenal support play. And that does start to weigh on your mental here. I imagine if the Camelot Kings don't come out swinging, get an early first blood, or at the very least just run neutral, might lose a little bit of that gusto.
We got to see if the Camelot Kings can bounce back here and extend the set, or is this going to be a sweep for the Oni Warriors? Let's get ready to jump into game number 3 with Gore and Mifflin.
Thank you so much, J-Mac and Trelly, for what could be the last game of this set, depending on if the Warriors get to run it the way they would like to. Mifflin and the Kings have to shape up at this point if they want to turn things around. They've gone back to some classics we've seen. Quig, first off on Yemoja, is a very good combination, but Tings on the Tiamat, Twig even going to the Lancelot, which we haven't seen in a little while. Twitch poll has been getting progressively more Warriors every single game, which may be deservedly so. And thoughts on Kuang. So I guess the question I have for you, first and foremost, is knowing that he can't go back to the same build, gonna slow this down enough?
Well, seeing as the previous build, I think, was almost a late game thing, it shouldn't slow them down. I gotta assume it's just gonna be worse come late game because what was happening late game previously was just so unreasonably and unexpectedly dominant. Yeah, I mean, I would just have to assume this is blanket worse, but he might just like find 16 executes in lane and then rotate out and dunk mid lane. Like there are things that could happen that could be just as good. But what I saw was unreasonable. So it's a hard bar to match.
If you've set the scale, you've been playing at a 15, and the scale ended at a 10. You needed something to balance it out. Maybe the Kuang gives us a 9 instead. We'll have to watch. So maybe some careful eyes. I'm also curious, at least in lane, how well it sustains up against a Wukong. I mean, damage-wise, you'd think, yeah, a lot of that. Maybe some easy bullying from Variety that could turn this around, but the clear, maybe because Variety was too busy focusing on Sot, at least for this first wave, goes over to the Kuang. So I'm going to keep eyes on the sidebars where the health bars are for him. Otherwise, it comes over towards some pressure in Aegis. And an Aegis not only picked up, but used early by Pegon. Lancelot, someone we haven't haven't seen a whole lot of. Do you think that Twig is going to have a, I guess, turnaround performance? Is it going to showcase that Lancelot can stay in the meta?
I mean, Twig is a Lance player. Sot no Dragon soloed out by Variety. A bounce back out of the solo lane and one desperately needed by the Camelot Kings. Great start. Put behind the late game hyper carry, prevent it from just having a free reign game. Ideal for the Order side if they want to extend this set. What was the initial question? Is Twig going to put on a show on Lancelot?
Yeah,
he could. He could for sure. It was one of his picks at the previous Worlds run. It's a pick that he's been going towards pretty consistently. Even Variety had been taking it for a good long while there. So barring Twig, the Camelot Kings as a whole seem to be a pretty massive fan of this pick. High mobility, great massive cripple field with the Grand Joust. I think there's a good deal of potential with it.
Well, we'll see right here. Dash forward from Sot, but there's going to be the stun. There's some damage. And he's running away. But he's not going to make it anywhere. One more hit, one more kill, 2-0 for Variety. And it is a great start for the solo lane for the Kings.
Yeah, maybe Sot overheated after those first 2 games. 0-2 start, I mean, that's tough. Falling down twice, I should say, that quickly. It's a big deal and it's not a massive deal. Had the death come maybe even 5-6 seconds later, there's potential for blue buff invade. But because Sot's able to grab this blue buff, it's not...
Oh, man.
So, you know, it's actually a pretty big deal that Sot fell down twice so far. Losing out on that blue buff, real important. I mean, that's tough, dude. That's tough for sure. It's Variety time. He's not going to do Sot's build, but it's Variety time.
It's Variety time. Does Sot going Blink... I guess the best question, I can't think of how I want to word it, was that, I mean... Before he's 0-2, Does that seem like an okay decision to
like
you?
walking out of base the first minute, triple goose egg, SOT, everybody's level 1, is that okay? Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. Having that aggression, I think Blink in first slot indicates to me that he really wanted to get involved in the mid fights a little bit more. Maybe make use of the burnt beads that either Panitom or Genetics was going to be able to grab on a BigManTingz and then rotate through with executes, keep it simple. Blink from behind, though, I mean, obviously not great.
Yeah, Quig right now in a not great position. Panitom going to be able to put up 1 Twig, match the rotation. He's going to be surrounded by 3, no CC. Means he's going to be able to walk out of this, so it's a quick run in, kill the support, get out, and a shield buff. Trying to figure out where they maybe want to put their focus now. A level deficit in solo, but a level lead in jungle. Warriors keeping things interesting for us here. And more importantly, maybe, Mifflin, the Kings keeping things interesting for us here in Game 3.
Yeah, a far departure from the pace of the previous games. The Camelot Kings controlling the soul lane. Very important here. Slight stumble in the duo, but Yemoja is actually pretty good from behind. One of the stronger behind Guardians, in that you're playing very far back for the most part. A lot of your value comes from sustain and out of combat. And no matter what, walls still work. Even if you're level 5 against 20s, River's Rebuke's still going to lock people down. So I think Quig still in a decent position. I'd love to see the Camelot Kings keep pressure, though, on the right side of the map. I for the most part, really want to see CaptainTwig keep SOT down before he can stack up some of this defense and make sure Variety is able to continually take these blue buffs, because that's where the lead really establishes itself.
So far, Panitom seems to be playing Guardian immediately to make sure that some of that farm's going to stay a little more sided. Keep things as balanced as you can. Because, Mifflin, you know, we talked about it, like going down 0-2 in lane, it's not going to be great. Saw it, and Kuang maybe has like a very Hunter-esque vibe, a Freya-esque vibe as well, which is once you get those items online and get to the late game part, you're still late game Kuang, right? You can be 0-6 and you still have it. It just delays how long it takes to get there.
I agree with that. Top to bottom, agree with it. Conceptually, scaling is going to be there. I don't know what SOT's build's going to be.
Yeah, good point.
I don't know what SOT's late game Kuang is. Like, Glad Shield first slot, a little bit of survivability, get some cooldown. I'm not going to hate on Glad Shield. Is it standard on Kuang? No. Is he going to start transitioning into auto attack? Is he going to go like mage focused after this? Are we sticking like tank? Like, it's so hard to know with this guy.
He could just be an execute machine.
Could be.
Or a dive in and scare him, which admittedly is what he was doing last game. I don't know if you're going to be able to get away with that on an Kuang. Granted, he's got invisibility, so maybe there's something that can be said about jump scaring some people. So he's got questions that need to be answered. So does Twig. Drops the Joust Fields onto Panitom. Panitom with a double knockup from the ult, though, pulls him in and knocks down one. Now Tings forced into an awkward spot. Goes forward from Panitom. Damage is there. Now it's up to Pegon to try and find the last couple of hits. They need the damage. You need a little more from your savior, Pegon. He is able to take down Tings just in time. Keeps his jungler alive. Unfortunately for them, while they find success in the left side jungle around the Gold Fury, they lose their carry over in left lane.
Yeah, Jarcorrr able to find one over Netrioid there, even through the Scarab's Blessing, which goes used. So, Genetics lose out on a bit of value, can't quite keep his ADC alive, and the Camelot Kings keep the set alive, the set dream, pushing their gold lead just past that 1,000 mark, keeping experience largely even as well. Pegon, good pull! No way he's out. CaptainTwig's got it this time, but can he make it out alive?
That's going to be the question. No, never mind. It's not going to be the question. Emphatic
RKO
statement,
from off screen.
Sot just shows up to make sure and gets a kill on board, which is going to be massive for him. And Mifflin, I'm sure, like me, actually, we're going to hold that thought for a moment. Look at Panitom's positioning. Might be going for Variety. Comes in for the pull, forces out the Ox Form, teleports in. Somersault Cloud is there. And that is going to be, like you said, where he should be all right. But if you're anything like me, you're less worried about what's happening with Variety over on right now. You're wondering how exactly the Scarab's Blessing was used and didn't necessarily save everything.
Oh, I'm going cross-eyed. There's so much happening.
A blue buff, that's fine as where it is. Look at this. I mean, Jarcorrr.
Oh, good stun. Revives there. Heavenly Banner just connects
good
immediately
damage.
afterward. Just not enough from the Scarab's Blessing to keep him out of that death threshold. Good usage from Jarcorrr. Catches him on like first active frame too. I mean, there was nothing Netrioid could have done. If he had Leap available, maybe. If that was a little bit slower, Heavenly Banner could have been avoided. But instead, just a poor fight. Quig locks him down perfectly, and Jarcorrr lines him up. Clean stuff over in the dual lane from the Camelot Kings. On the right-hand side, the Oni Warriors have a bit of a skirmish around the enemy blue buff. Now, in a state of neutrality, it's the Camelot Kings nursing the exact same lead we had seen from the Warriors in Game 2. Around that 1,000 mark, experience as well. Starting to veer in their favor. I wonder, though, where are the inflection points? Where do you start putting some of this action? Are the Camelot Kings capable of leveraging their lead into objectives, which was their standard MO previously? Goldfear would be hard to knock down. There's a 4-stack on the left side.
They have pressure on Genetics.
But he should
And
be
they're
dead.
going to be looking for him. River's Rebuke thrown up. They really want to put down this Khepri. There's a Scarab's Blessing on himself. Has some movement speed to get out of there, but the damage is just good and prolongs long enough to make sure that the former support for the Kings goes down, thanks to the current support for the Kings, Quig, making sure to keep him locked up. Damage was good, specifically onto Jarcorrr, but no good follow-up from the Warriors to find a kill there. Now, Kings lead 5-4 as we start to hit 10 minutes.
And Netrioid puts up a lot of really good damage there into Jarcorrr. Desert Fury connects the majority of its shots. Jarcorrr dropped just below half. Maybe if Pegon were closer by, could have kept that fight a bit more even. Instead, it was a numbers advantage for the Camelot Kings top to bottom, and even with Genetics surviving as long as he does, and it was a very long time, not quite able to find any bit of fight back there for the Oni Warriors. Twig, though, may have done too much. He's got nothing left.
Nothing to run away with. And Panitom makes it look easy. Kills off Twig in the right side jungle. Has a little bit of help now, going for an invade. And is going to be met with Tings and Variety. Sot blinks over the wall and immediately has 2 turn towards him.
It's kind of tanky.
Is tanky, doesn't have a lot of damage to his name. Does not seem to be a qualm for him right now. Blue buff invade, successful. And Variety had a decently large lead earlier. Now it's 11-11 in terms of experience. And Sot has managed to right the wrongs of the 0-2 start.
Yeah, I'm really curious. And Doug, maybe you can help us out here. Dragon Call actually has an insane bit of damage on it, just base. So if he's connecting every single auto attack, that's the second ability. I'm not so certain that it's really a massive deal. So it's like 95. You got a massive burst from range as well. I think just the base damage on that ability, as of right now, is going to be very threatening. You can see it reflected on the Variety immediately with the CDR from Genji's and Glad Shield. There's a good deal of poke at play from SOT. So even with no dedicated damage items outside of Vampiric, he really is still a threat. And given any bit of time alone, if he can full channel a Dragon Call auto check chain onto a squishier target like Jarcorrr or BigManTingz, he might still have 100-0 potential as well. And that's not even taking into account the potential of deviating in this build. It doesn't necessarily need to be a full dedicated defense build as the game goes on. Curious to see it. He's doing it different.
Stygian Beacon going to be spawning in just a few seconds. Seems like a fight on left started up. Good stun against the wall from Netrioid onto Quig. It's going to be a leap forward, knock up. What? The Riptide creates enough space there. And a teleport, a little late from Panitom to lock anybody down. Beacon started up by Tings, met by Pegon and Genetics and Sot. So he's going to surprise Tings.
He hits hard.
A lot of damage that comes out of him. And I'm sorry I doubted you earlier. You don't need to prove it anymore. But maybe this team fight is going to do exactly that. Bounce back and forth. Halfway charged is the Beacon for the Kings, and it's going to go up to full pretty quickly there. Genetics tries to slow it down a little bit, but there's just no time to respond. Tings is low. It doesn't seem like anybody's really going to be looking for the fight just yet. Instead, Netrioid split pushes, knocks down a tier 2. Gets the job done. Has to play careful. Quig in trouble in mid.
That's not good.
Executed out. But can Netrioid escape what is an inevitable gank right now? You've got Lancelot in the jungle with you. They're looking for something in right as well. The Warriors fighting on all fronts. In fact, Mifflin, they're just going to go ahead and start pushing down towers.
Yeah, grab the tower in left and in mid. BigManTingz pulled back in, dropped down to half. And a reset from the Oni Warriors. I thought it would be an immediate call for Gold Fury off the back of that pick, and still some potential to do so. Netrioid picking up the aggro, but they're doing this fully within the vision of the Camelot Kings. They've got Oracle control. This is not a sneak.
This is going to be a close call. Fury's low. Jousting fields are there, but it's too late. The Warriors pick up the Gold Fury. Have the kill lead, now the gold lead, 1,500 in their favor. Experience roughly equal between these two teams. Unfortunately for Twig, that one comes up just a little shy. He's gone Transcendent second as well, Twig has. And so it feels like, you know, despite what we've seen, 2, 3, and 1, pretty active early game. Is this going to slow him down too much, or can he keep playing as aggressive as he has?
I mean, you can. Items only help you with stats,
True.
right? Should he? I think he needs to spend some time farming up. Transcendence just really does hit a massive power spike once you finish that stack. So spend a little bit of time in the jungle, maybe some time on these waves farming would make some sense to me. Panitom, on the other hand, finishes his Brawler's Beat Stick and has gone for a very fast build. Yeah, Twig, and it's an issue, and I understand why Twig runs with it. One of the primary issues with Lancelot when he was getting picked pretty consistently by the majority of the teams in the SPL was his last 5% damage dealt. We talk about 100 to 0 a whole lot. Lancelot's going to like 100 to 10% you for the most part.
Yeah.
And he really struggles with that last 10. So where do you make up for that? Additional power from stacking items. Maybe some proc effects like Heartseeker can help out too. But those builds tend to be a little bit more expensive and take a little bit longer to line up. A sacrifice, it seems, CaptainTwig is willing to make.
Went for something. There's the Archdruid's Fury. So more tankiness in mind, at least up front, right? For SoloOrTroll. I was going to talk about Twig's recipe of choice, but right now, Sot is maybe taking a little bit more attention. Takes a lot of damage in the process of zoning out 3. Can't get away with it this time around, but they do still capture the Pyromancer. Close call as the Kings now surge forward. Pegon going to be the second one gone. Kills, ringing true for the Kings. They pick up a third in Genetics, and now with 3 of them gone for 30,
big.
The Fire Giant is open for the Kings for the first time this set.
Netrioid's healthy, and he's working his way across the map. Panitom has his back prevented by Variety, but maybe Variety sticks around too long. Ultimate shot's not there, but Panitom has got the damage to finish him off. So that's 1 Fire Giant off the board immediately, assuming Netrioid can't get there in time, and he cannot. The Camelot Kings will put fire on all 4. Variety trades his life to guarantee that Fire Giant for his team. If Netrioid doesn't get distracted, if there's nothing preventing his path to the fire, Desert Fury is not the best steal tool, and it shouldn't out-confirm, but it's certainly more threatening than nothing. So I think a good call from Variety to go ahead and trade himself.
16-minute Fire Giant, massive power spike. You have to imagine for the Kings. It's just, what can they do with it? A lot of towers still need to be knocked down. It's 5 still standing for the Warriors versus the 4 left for the Kings. But Mifflin, I was going to talk, at least, or look at the Party Punch. That was the pickup for Twig, which is going to give him a little bit of extra damage here. Something I didn't even think about how well it would mesh with a Lancelot.
Ooh.
Because it's all based on the units traveled here. Maybe that's been opening up a lot of these first couple of hits that have really opened these fights. And unfortunately for Sot, we did see in this last engagement the unfortunate nature that is in Kuang, which is you can build super tanky, but you're just not quite what the Odin was, not quite what the Chalk was, and so he zoned out 3, lost his life for it. But it's tier 1 in right, and now at tier 2, the Warriors doing all of the pressuring right now and going for a little bit more variety. Avoids the knock-up thanks to the CC immunity from the ult. Goes back in. It's going to be balanced out. Tier 2 in right, going to be met with a tier 2 in left.
He needs help.
And you've got Pegon versus 2 here, and like you said, needs a little bit more versus 3 here. And now he definitely needs the cavalry. Unfortunately, they're late. They do come in, kill off Jarcorrr. And they might be able to find a little bit more. They're chasing him down. Twig is low. He's got move speed. How far away can he get, and what can Sot do? Knock up. Have to imagine it's going to be good, and it's just the close gap from SOT and Panitom. The 2v2 goes their way. TingZ tries to do everything he can, but he can't. And SOT gets to live. Panitom turn that one around, and Pegon trades his life for 3.
What a miserable turn of events for the Camelot Kings. Massive overcommit for the kill. Pegon finds maximum value, does immense damage before he falls down. And the Oni Warriors able to punish it. Jarcorrr diving behind that tower leaves him alone on no man's land. CaptainTwig had already used everything, so by the time he's able to get back on the horse, had already gotten so much gap close onto him that he's immediately knocked back off of it. And BigManTingz nearly able to make it a 1-for-1 at the tail end, just slightly off the mark with that knock-up. SOT avoids that one narrowly. And the Oni Warriors, who were on the brink, who were on the precipice, they couldn't quite break that tier 2 tower on right, still can't. If you're not keen-eyed, it's barely still standing. But it's that left Phoenix that really could have gone down there. Unfortunately for the Kings, it's just a slight overstep, a slight misstep, cost them so greatly. That's your Fire Giant power play. It's over.
We saw Beacon get taken by the Warriors. Now the Fury, Oni Fury at that, taken by the Warriors. And Mifflin, because of the fact that that Fire Giant was taken so early, I thought we were approaching the fact that the Titans were going to start marching down, but instead...
And we got a little bit.
Yeah, we still got a little bit. Twig knocked up into the air thanks to the ult from SOT. He uses his ult, as you mentioned, the jousting fields to get away. And I don't think he's going to be dismounting anytime soon, as he just tries to disengage. But in the blink of an eye, that went from the Kings winning a massive fight, getting an early Fire Giant, and turning this game into their favor, to the Warriors just doing Warrior things. Pressure on right, fight in left, Pyro and objectives go their way, and now you're looking at a 1,200 gold lead. 20 minutes in, that's not too much, but suddenly they go from behind to ahead, and it's just from this kind of play we've come to expect from this team.
Yeah, this time, though, the Camelot Kings in a much better position. I like their odds now, maybe more than ever so far this set, and so it's about play on field. Gold experience still largely even. Panitom, that's a dangerous play to make. They're ready for him, but Genetics similarly ready for Panitom. Gets him out of there. You got to get out alive now. It's a full disengage. Had a little bit of time on the Fire Giant respawn, but maybe not enough that Genetics will get that ultimate back.
Twig chasing pretty far. Has his team with him, so it's not just a lone singularity. Opts for damage onto Netrioid. Maybe bites off way more than he can chew.
You can't do that.
And it's an easy kill for the Warriors. Because now they've turned things around.
Is it
SOT's
Jover?
back in the back line. It's not as easy as it was for him in the past, but it just goes to show that he is not changing the style of play he's brought. Fire Giant spawns in.
Oh,
21 minutes in, and you've got to pick on Twig. This is an open hunting season for the Warriors. They're going to leave it a little bit for some breath.
Yeah, you got a massive power spike on Netrioid. Much rather get back to base, finish up that Deathbringer before you commit to the Fire Giant itself. That is going to be maybe the most important thing for actual DPS on Fire Giant. Crit's so good at that. And also, with the abilities available to both teams, a straight crit might just be one of the highest damaging individual abilities available. Like maybe an Ice Blast from Pegon. Maybe an Impale is up there, but I think crit might just do it.
Blink from Variety onto Panitom. Gets a lot of damage. Panitom uses his movement. Somersault Cloud used in response. So Relic's in an ult down. Panitom 6-0-3. Massive bounty on his head. He's just going to have to walk back to base the old-fashioned way. But if anything, Variety just bought a bunch of time for his team that otherwise they probably did not have. Also love, personally, I don't know how you feel about it, but I love this new view on the Fire Giant pit. Wide open, right? The back wall. You can see the FG from all around. Creates a different dynamic to these fights.
Makes it really difficult to cover it with vision, right? You can see it already. 2 Sentry Wards in the Fire Giant pit, whereas previously, for the most part, you can get away with just the 1. And even then, still have to cover all that vision around the Fire Giant. 360 degrees of potential threats around that pit. Finally, an open floor plan. Surtur could never. The Oni Warriors, though, seem to be keeping up their aggression, trying to get some of those aggressive wards dealt with. But no more vision in pocket for the Oni Warriors means that wards on field are all they're going to have. Camelot Kings, on the other hand, still have 1 more sentry in Variety's pocket. Might be able to get some control around that pit, but how could you ever work up towards it if the Warriors are threatening your tier 2?
And that's the thing, I was thinking, let's set up for a Fire Giant fight. What else could they possibly do? The Warriors have just walked at the Kings and the jungle. They haven't started a fight. They've just been a little bit of poke here and there. But it has pushed the Kings, as you said, under the tier 2 in mid. Gold Fury's up on left. Pyro's going to be back in 30 seconds. So the Warriors have plenty of options if they want to go for objectives. They've got plenty of options if they want to do something other than, posture outside of the tier 2. But with a minion wave and 4 of them still here, they have yet to do anything else. Waiting for the King maybe to engage. Beacon's going to be coming up. This one would spawn the Titans. And maybe Panitom loops around. I don't know where the fight's supposed to start here.
Yeah, I don't know what Panitom's getting up to on the left side. You could see the Camelot Kings actually throw some pings in the left side jungle. Concerned perhaps with that rotation from Panitom, realizing that is exactly where he was, but rotation finally now just starting to be made. And he's got the whole flank, man.
And nobody seems to be looking at him. Throws the teleport out there.
He's spotted.
Tingz has been spotted out, but it does not matter when you get the execute onto Quig instantly. Titans are going to be coming down mid, so that gives the Warriors something to do, but it does not seem like they care too much. They're going straight to the fire with their pick.
Our Giant's going to burn slow until the rest of the team catches up here. Are the Camelot Kings willing to show any form of defense? They got no real great steal potential. BigManTingz, maybe that stun, the sigil, the best he could do, and even then, relatively low range, and so won't be risking it. Fire Giant now for the Oni Warriors. And it really is an intelligent level of play from them. The decision-making of, well, we can't tip the balance in the Fire Giant dance, so standing here, maybe the most difficult thing we could do. We're always risking getting poked from the neutral objective, so instead, let's pressure tier 2, control where the Camelot Kings are allowed to stand, and then fall back to the beacon, bait them forward, have Panitom come in from behind. I mean, they just split the map, completely forced the Camelot Kings cross-eyed. They had no idea what was going on. And the Oni Warriors catch him unawares. Quig, I mean, did he even get an ability off before he get knocked down? It was just a whole lot of CC, immediately into eaten by a dragon.
Not only that, I mean, Fire Giant, like you said, maybe it's right to go unanswered by the Kings. Pyromancer after the Fire Giant? Yeah, absolutely. Right side Phoenix fell with a very, very, very silent screen, right?
Yeah, nobody was there.
Nobody was there. Nothing, no defense, nothing crazy. The Chaos Titan looks like it's going to be the first one knocked back here in mid between the two of them. The Warriors are still around. They still have 2 tier 2s to knock down in left and in mid. So a little bit of gold on the map for this team to plunder. 6-0-4 Heartseeker just picked up now for Panitom. It feels like he's already been doing well, and now he can just do more. But it's sought. 3-3-2. Maybe the slash line isn't as crazy as it was on the Odin. Maybe it's not as crazy as it was on the Chalk, but he's still getting the same job done. Maybe in a less ridiculous way.
No, you see how he's like backing up, and when he gets hit by abilities, his HP bar is actually moving? Yeah, this is a far cry from what you had seen in game 1 and 2, but still certainly finding some value on the Quang. That execute has been the difference maker in the last couple of these team fights. Quig just won't have an answer to it, ever. There's no CC immunity that he could pick up, maybe a Magi's, but even then there's great tools on the Oni Warriors to deal with Magi's from range, with non-committal abilities, Impale, or the Arcane stance on Merlin. And so, might dissuade him from electing to go down that path, and instead might dedicate some of his resources to getting just a bit tankier. Not much time to play with, though. The Oni Warriors have their way. Just 1-2 stray auto attacks take out about 10% of that bird on the left-hand side. And the solo jungle split in mid, SOT and Panitom collecting the minion wave. This next wave coming up, that's where the siege might just start up. The Oni Warriors, though, they've got time to play with.
Yeah, minute and a half, a little under a minute and a half left on the power play. Try and get the job done. They've got minions in left, but like you said, it's a little difficult. Clear seems to be good from the Tiamat. Sot and Panitom unable to get the job done in mid. Fire minions will be pouring down right, so they do have a benefit that eventually someone from the Kings is going to have to go defend that, or it's going to be free poke onto the Titan. Knock up from Variety onto Panitom in mid just to knock him around a little bit. Still the 3-2 split. Panitom going to join his team in left. No, he's just falling back, stealing a speed buff. Minion wave is there. Left side Phoenix, half health, couple more autos could do a lot. River's Rebuke thrown up, creates a little bit of a wall. Instead, it's the Warriors grouping as 5 on left. Jump in, go for the bird. And they're going to find that one no problem. No kills just yet. Low health bar for Jarcorrr sends them back to the base. Warriors step through the doors, grab the minion wave in mid. 25 seconds left on the Fire Giant power play. They keep getting a little more aggressive, but I don't think they're going to be able to find too much here. Jousting Field's dropped by Quig. Genetic steps forward. The DPS can slowly begin. No minions and no EFG means it's going to take a little bit. But Netrioid has the damage, has the autos. A couple more shots is all it would take with the bird left standing. Now it's jumping from Variety. Variety just melted, and that might honestly be the pick that the Warriors needed to crack this base open even further. They get aggressive. Riptide, good to get Jarcorrr and Quig out of there. Fire minions on right. And speaking of right, the right side Phoenix going to come up shortly, but the Warriors play it safe, play it smart, back away from the base successful.
I got lost in that color explosion. I didn't even see how Variety got delivered to the back line. Clearly the CC was there once he got there, but it wasn't a blink. He didn't ultimate in. Must have just been that transformation trying to find the disruption, and unfortunately for him, the only one disrupted was himself. And so the Oni Warriors break the base once more, this time twofold. Left and center Phoenix taken off the map. Right has respawned, but it's a massive power spike for every individual member of the Oni Warriors. I can't break down every single item purchase, but starters finished up. SOT gets blood-soaked as well as Ethereal, so now he's actually got some damage and a little bit more survivability. Netrioid upgrades a few of those relics to level 2, as well as finish up his starter. So the Oni Warriors significantly stronger than they were previously. All that gold that they had accumulated in that Fire Giant power play from Pyromancer, from the tier 2's knockdown and both birds, finally spent up. And the Camelot Kings realize if fire goes down again, enhanced Fire Giant at that, we do not have a snowball's chance in hell on a defense. So instead, have to dedicate time here.
They are stepping up. It's like you said, this Fire Giant is enhanced now. Genetics takes about a third of his health bar and poke. Is able to dash away from that one. Twig has to play it careful, goes around, finds Pegon, gets some good damage, but he takes just as much in response. Netrioid locked down a great ultimate from Quig to keep him in, but it is a double knock-up now from Panitom. Needs a little help from his team. Execute from Sot onto Quig is good. 3 on each side taken away. Tings will be the 4th for the Kings gone. And it leaves 2 standing on one side. Just Variety to deal with all these fire minions, but look at them mifflin' the Warriors. They recognize the time they have left, the fire minions. They're gonna try to go in. It's Genetics and Sot. We've seen what damage he has and where he's gonna focus it, and it does not seem like he cares too much about what Variety has. Throws a little bit of damage out towards the Sun Wukong.
15 seconds, has to get the wave.
Yeah, they need a fire minion wave here. Can they do it?
Variety's playing this well. He's keeping the wave out.
Slowing him down. Sot walks in, pulls the Titan, has to leash it immediately.
Major fumble.
And that is going to be the full-on reset. Both teams respawning. I expect we'll be looking at the Fire Giant again in a second.
Real well played from Variety there. If the Titan at any point aggroed a minion wave, if a minion wave ever gets into the throne room, that's immediately GG. Variety can't prevent the Dragon Call damage. Could not have stopped him. Doesn't have enough damage himself to prevent it. And so the only thing he could have relied on was the DPS from his own Titan, and in being willing to trade, what was it, 50% of his HP just to keep those minion waves out. Keeps the game alive. Great decision making from the soul laner, the Kings. Soul laner, the Warriors, though, no man's land. Narrowly escapes with his life. SOT. This guy, I mean, he gives and he takes. This time survives. Fire Giant, though, makes all where this had started. That entire team fight, that back and forth battle between the Kings and the Warriors. It'll resume here.
It's a heavy investment from the Kings. Left side Phoenix just came up and went back down to the minions. So if you're keeping all 5 over here, you got to get something out of it before you have to send someone back. Mid Phoenix is going to suffer a similar fate relatively soon with the fire minions pouring down mid. And the Titan will get poked ever so slightly.
That mid Phoenix spawning up.
That wave is going to walk right by it this time around, so the next one's going to have to do the work for him. Fire Giant has to be the call.
Watch Sot.
For the Kings. Also have to watch Variety. Both of them hanging around. What a great play from Panitom so far.
Sot's going
and
for
gets the proc that you need, but like you said, Sot running down mid, at least looking for the Phoenix, keeping the team preoccupied. Tings is going to get forced to back. Should have the defense of the Titan if necessary. clear out the minion waves, and that's going to be enough there. Fire Giant, though, Mifflin, it's still under threat. Finally gets dropped by both of these squads. Quig's half health. Twig has a massive shield, but not a lot of healing. Sot and Tings may be the deciding factor right now. How many backs can you sop if you're the Warriors, and what can Sot do on map? Let's get the Phoenix. It seems like it's going to be a retreat from there.
Yeah, Sot can't do a whole lot more with BigManTingz there. Much easier for Tiamat to keep those waves out. And so, best case was fold in. Maybe if the Oni Warriors commit to the Fire Giant, could catch the Camelot Kings slipping. That might be the case once more. Variety, Jarcorrr very far forward. And SOT's got the flank.
Fire Giant, 25% HP left on it. The Kings are going to walk forward in, and this one's going to end up going down. Goes to the Warriors, but the damage, the kills, the fights afterward, it's on them as well. Variety comes in, helps pick up one more, but it is Quig and Tings versus the world. Now the damage from the Tiamat, the lockdown from the Yemoja has done a lot, and it's forced out Pegon and Netrioid. They have to play carefully.
Yikes.
Executes good from Sot. What can Tings do on his own as the minions are getting the job done on their own? Does not matter. They kill off the Kings. And now they're going to run it down mid, close out this set, and Mifflin try to restart what ended at Masters.
Man, I really thought the pace of this game would have been more of what we had seen. Games 1 and 2, was not expecting that at all. The Camelot Kings and the Oni Warriors, both phenomenal teams. This one, much more back and forth. The Camelot Kings set an early pace, controlled a majority of the engagements throughout the first 10 or so minutes. But eventually, these small plays really shift the tides. I'm going all the way back to that initial Phoenix push from the Camelot Kings, that overstay and that rotation back. That really did put a stopper to the majority of their aggression. From there, they had to retake the driver's seat, but they're playing at a deficit, having lost their Phoenix. If it's just a little bit cleaner in those small opportunities, I mean, this set could have easily gone even further.
It's just one of those moments where you really get to see, I guess, the struggle, which realistically for the Warriors was, man, we didn't have Sot on something. I could just run back there the whole game. Turns out the game's a little harder when he's not distracting 3 of them in every single team fight. But the good news is they still find their win. They get a 3-0 victory here, and again, they're starting out maybe what could be another streak. For them, like you said, their focus is Worlds. We'll just have to keep our eyes on the Warriors, but for now we can keep our eyes on the desk as they break this one down.
The end goal for the Warriors might be Worlds, but as far as their short-term goal, find themselves a 3-0 here against the Camelot Kings. Though this game, Charlie, looked a lot stronger for the Kings. Variety gets off to a really good start over on the right-hand side of the map, something that he'd been struggling in the first couple of games on this Wukong. Gets those couple of kills, keeps SOT at bay on this Kuang, doesn't let him go crazy. But as we start getting to these late game team fights, things start to get a little bit more even. These more scattered team fights didn't necessarily favor one team or another. It wasn't until we started getting down to the more 5v5 style that we started to see the Warriors comp come online a bit.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this Wukong gameplay as opposed to the previous. I'm not going to say the Variety was playing poorly, but this time around, this was more along what I was expecting out of the solo lane. The issue, of course, was genetics. So on point with the Khepri reses, no matter how much dive you have, that Scarce Blessing was a problem. Panitom absolutely popping off on the Susano. So many kills being able to confirm, as well as just juking and baiting out abilities with that jet stream. And then Pegon, this Merlin, was definitely an issue. Top of the damage charts by a wide margin. This Merlin was doing so much to the back. I believe like 42k. Closest to him was BigManTingz at like 30,000. So a lot of issues there for the Oni Warriors once they were able to get late game. Seemed like everything was going their way. And despite the Camelot Kings making some good stops, they did have a little bit of comeback potential, but the map state was not in their favor. Having 2 birds down in the Titan that week, very difficult to come back from.
There were at least extra signs kind of there. You know, there's a moment where SOT and Genetics, they try walking up, maybe try and type the Titan. Variety makes a very heads-up play. It's highlighted really well there by Mifflin of making sure a minion never gets to that throne room towards that Titan to remove those backdoor protections and make it easy for this Kuang to get that damage out there. But unfortunately, because of how much time was spent just defending back at the base once that one was done, minion waves never really got pushed out. And if that fight extends here at this Fire Giant for even 5, maybe 10 more seconds, the minions just walk up and end that game at the very end on their own.
Yeah, I think as long as that fight was stalling out, it was the correct call. Because the EFG maybe is a toss-up, but at the very least, Sot is split pushing. He grabs a mid Phoenix by himself, and then he just plays the waiting game, saying, Tings can't leave. your team is eventually going to get sandwiched in at EFG. So I'm just going to sit here, decide to go for the Titan if you want me to leave. If not, I'm going to just keep stalling. Ends up working out quite well for him. So if this is the first look at the new Oni Warriors, we'll call it, with genetics, definitely a threat.
Yeah, this new Oni Warriors team already starting off on a pretty hot foot. We can take a look, though, at the bracket so you can see what to expect for the remainder of our weekend. That's it that we have for today's games. We had Six Fairman with a 3-0 and the Oni Warriors 3-0. That means the Gladiators and the Kings are out of the kickoff tournament. Tomorrow, we'll have the Jade Dragons, the Highland Ravens, and the Eldritch Hounds and Atlantis Leviathans facing off, and then they will face the respective winners on their sides of the bracket there. So Dragons and Ravens win. They face the Ferrymen. Hounds or Leviathans will be the ones to take on the Oni Warriors and see if there can be somebody to stop this Warrior streak. And I mean, if things go the way that they are, how convincing some of these sets have already been, we could very well be looking at a Masters rematch for our grand finals kind of matchup here. Semifinals will be played over on Saturday, and then that finals match over on Sunday with that divisional placement draft show happening immediately afterwards. So make sure you're tuning in for all 3 days of the remainder of the event out there. But a big win for the Oni Warriors to find themselves, at least to start this tournament off, is going to be kind of questionable. I would say it was questioned, not questionable, but questioned at the start how strong this team might look with the new support. Seems that Genetics has slotted in just fine with this team.
That does seem to be the case, right? And I think that it was always the assumption that he would be able to just, mold this team the way he wanted to, and also the team would have accepted him willingly. So I think this was always the assumption, but it's good to see that that's exactly what played out.
And speaking of Genetics, not only did he just find himself a 3-0, but we've also got to stand by with the Gormizer for our post-game interview.
That's right, I've got Genetics here, and I guess first and foremost, the question is, how does it feel playing with the Warriors, get your first win under your belt?
Yeah, it's really fun. I'm enjoying myself a lot being on the team.
How different is it from the environment that you've been in for the last couple of years with the Kings?
It's definitely a lot different. I mean, every team's got pros and cons. The Kings are really good at some stuff, and the Warriors are really good at other stuff. It's just figuring out what each player likes to play, and I mean, Salt's just very, very different to play with than Harry is for the most part.
Yeah, we were laughing, at least in game 2, because he was emoting around as the hot dog, but still absolutely locked in. So I guess the question is, game 3 feels much more like a competitive game that we're used to you're used to having to sit through with the pace of the game and the way things go. But games 1 and 2, it felt like there was a certain point where things just broke, and the team was, whether they were holding back before, finally just let the onslaught of what we came to know in Phase 1 as the Warriors. So what was it playing, not just playing but the comms, what's the environment like when your team's playing like that?
So game 1 and 2, we won the draft pretty hard, so we knew that when we got power spikes, we could beat them. In the game 3, we had an equally good late game. Tiamat versus Merlin. I've played it versus for years now. BigMan would pick it versus Shinka and vice versa. So late game was a bit of a brawl, but when you get one Phoenix, usually.
And I know we've talked about it. In fact, Mifflin has talked to all of the Warriors about it, but what the goal is, I guess, this phase, because the standard of Phase 1 is something that you can't really hold yourself to, and nobody should be holding you to, because it's ridiculous to be able to do something like that. But where do you guys consider yourselves completely successful throughout the phase? Just for we can keep it a regular season, you can go to Worlds, whichever one you want.
I don't think it's where we finish. I think it's how we're playing. This team is the most aggressive team in the league by far. And I think I'd like to hopefully achieve calculated aggression at some point, if that's a phrase that I'm going to use. Because Daniel, he's not scared of dying. So I'm just trying to work on making aggressive plays that we know are going to be in our favor for the most part. And then it should be an easy world.
It's going to be fun to watch. I'm excited to see what you guys have. Congrats on the 3-0, man, and on the new team. And thanks for your time. And of course, we'll throw it back to the desk to close out the day.
Calculated aggression is definitely one of those ones that could very likely be thrown into there, because when I think of, typical NA style of play, that's very aggressive team.
Oh, yeah.
You think of EU, much more methodical. They sit back, they weigh, they kind of calculate things. So now blending potentially the best of both worlds is that goal for Gen X. And I think just based off of initial what we've seen, could be something that we could expect for the remainder of this phase.
If calculated aggression in this speed of game and this, level of kills is what the baseline is, not only for the Oni Warriors, but for, I guess, teams trying to replicate this style, it should be extremely exciting, right? That's the kind of bloody matchups that are the most fun to cast, because there's constantly action happening. There's constant just fighting and ganks happening and all that stuff. So exciting stuff, no doubt.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the biggest kind of breath of fresh air coming from Masters and some of the events prior to this, where we were still kind of accustomed to like that average 35 to 40 minute time. Now seeing these games are definitely speeding up a little bit. It kind of brings a new life into competitive meta and seeing this more kind of early game style of play. So I'm excited to see what the remainder of our weekend holds, what some of these teams still have out. Because remember, we've only seen half of our teams so far, Charlie. We still got to see the other half of the league tomorrow for the remainder of our quarterfinals.
You're telling me there's still half of these games to go?
I'm telling you, there's still half of our quarterfinals to go, and then we still have semis and finals. We still got 5 more sets.
You tell me we started SPL on a Thursday.
We did.
We never do that.
We started SPL on a Thursday, and we still got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to go. So on behalf of myself, Charlie, everyone behind the scenes, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 for the next round of quarters.